has been released, and we've got a new set to do a full review of. This is happening live, by the way, on Twitch. Hello everyone and welcome to episode I have no idea of FECast. It's been a long time since we've done this, but there's a new set coming out today. It just released about maybe 2 hours ago at this moment, and we're going to do a full set review. I know it's been a few months, but you know this is our job. This is our eternal duty. Being streamed live on Twitch. Hello podcast audience, hello Twitch audience. And hello, Stormblessed. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's good. It's been a while since we've had a bunch of new cards, and this set looks very interesting. Some cards seem less powerful, and a lot of cards seem inherently breakable. Anything with Unleash, like there's a Haru card with Unleash that costs 2, and I was like, this card looks bad. Why can't it cost 1? And I was like, oh yeah, it definitely can't cost 1 because the game would end immediately. But we'll get there.
Yeah, so since it's been so long, Stormblessed, why don't you give us like a quick summary of what you've been up to since the last time we had FECast regularly?
Yeah, so I'm in grad school, and I think I was in grad school still in FECast, but things have picked up in grad school, and I've just been very busy doing simulations and genetic, analysis basically on genomes.
Cool. I have also been studying data science. I completed my entire program since the last time we talked. I went from knowing nothing about the topic to feeling pretty confident in a bunch of things. I'm also excited that I'm able to play competitive Eternal again. There were 3 tournaments in a row that I just absolutely could not play because of previous conflicts, and due to the scarcity of tournaments, that was pretty disappointing, but looks pretty good from here on out, so I'm excited. And I'm excited about the new set. I've had a lot of time being unemployed to brew and play jank decks lately. So you will hear a lot of that commentary as we go over the new set.
Yeah, I'm very interested. I think, there's the, as far as the set's concerned, there's the half of me it's like, oh, definitely Throne's going to be taken over by some, incredible, insane combo deck. And there's the other half of me it's like, oh, Mono Fire is going to take it home again.
Yeah. There have also been a lot of changes. We're not going to go into it too much, but there's a really cool reprint change with how Expedition works. So Expedition now is just, I believe it's Cold Hunt, Unleashed, and the Unleashed reprints.
As well as the Vault.
Oh yeah, and the Vault. But the Vault is just generic cards, right?
There's a couple things that are relevant, but yes, I think Xenon Obelisk is part of the Vault, and that's fairly relevant at times. So,
yeah, okay. New Expedition has been changed in how it works. We're going to speculate on Expedition, but that's going to be the part that we are least clear about in our predictions. Anything else I should mention, or should we just get started with the?
I think we should just jump in, considering how long this might end up being. I think jumping in makes sense.
All right. So for those of you following,
oh my god, wait! Witching hours at Expedition. Oh my goodness. Okay. Anyways.
So for those of you following along on audio, we are just going through the client, filtering it with Unleashed by the Unleashed cards, and we're just going through starting on Fire, then Time, then Justice, Primal Shadow, and Multifaction. If you want to go to YouTube, we will actually have the video of all these cards if you want to see what they do. All right, start us out, Stormblessed. Which card should we talk about first?
I think we should talk about Breaker Blast. It's cute. It's Char plus. It's new Char. It's not Sweet Dreams though. It is actual new Char. Breaker Blast is 1 in the fire for a fast spell. Deal 1 damage to enemy. If it dies this turn, it gets void bound. And if you have 2 fire though, it deals double damage. So at 1 fire, it's worse than Char. But at 1 fire, it becomes slightly better than Char and scales up with spell damage. It's a cute card.
It is a cute card, but I'm going to say that unless you are really taking advantage of spell damage, this is not going to be very good. It's probably just going to be worse than Char a lot of the time.
I was definitely, I don't think it's going to be worse than Char, but it's going to be about the same. It's going to be about as good as Char is. I was definitely more excited for this card until I saw the full bevy of what Unleash had to offer, and I was like, I just want to try winning the game rather than making like a 5 damage burn spell. I just want to win the game.
All right, let's continue. How do you like Crackling Hustler? This is the 1/1 charge, summon, taunt, and Warcry. I think this is it's deceptively powerful, though admittedly it's not exactly what you want to be playing on turn 1.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I wish the card had Warcry inherently and had summon taunt this turn. If it did, I'd be like immediately for it. The fact it only has one Warcry is kind of awkward, but that's maybe for the best. It makes the card more interesting. The card I agree is deceptively powerful. Having taunt, being able to, you have a bunch of like 5/5s you want to push damage through or whatever. This can easily help you push damage through. And but as you say, it's not really a card that you want to play on one in many ways because it doesn't have Warcry inherently.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that if it had Warcry all the time, it would be a good play on 1 and later. As it is, it's kind of a removal spell on 1 and can be played later as an efficient option for pushing through, but it's probably not going to have that many great cases.
Yeah, that's why I wish it was had Warcry inherently, because then it would be like, hey, it's just a solid 1-drop in an aggro deck. But as is, can you really think of it as a 1-drop? Because like you don't want to be playing a 1/1 charge for 1 in even with like 1 Warcry. Like the top of your deck gets +1/+1. Maybe that's good enough, but I would be very surprised if it was.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the surprise card, Shopkin Dogma?
Yeah, so this is a promo from the chapter that was released today. Is we have 1 in a fire. Players can't gain life. At the start of your turn, gain a fire influence, and then if you have fire, 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 as in 16 fire influence, your spells deal +4 damage. What a hilarious card.
Yeah, I think this might be good. I've been looking for ways of gaining fire influence for a while because of cards like Rebuild. Rebuild is...
oh my goodness, I didn't think about Rebuild.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Cassandra is going to love this card to tears.
Yeah, so Rebuild gains power equal to your amount of fire influence. So if you had played this on turn 1 and layered in the game, you Rebuild, you could gain a lot of power. And Rebuild has Revenge. Yeah, so you could potentially do some pretty crazy things.
Oh, and then you get more. Yeah, I was just thinking about this straight up. I was thinking about this. There's like Flash Fire and the new other promo that we'll get to in a second, but that also works with fire influence. But yeah, I mean, Rebuild is clearly one of the first things that's going to be gone through here. Like you play this on 1, then normally with Rebuild you play Rebuild and then like you wait for the second Rebuild and then that's when you have enough power to go off, or at least that's how I remember it. With this card, you might not even need that because you'll just have so much fire influence.
Yeah, and the other thing is that this works well in multiples. Well, I mean, if you're trying to actually get to 16, because, as soon as one of them is on, all of them are on. So if you can imagine you draw 3 of them, your spells are doing +12 damage.
The only thing that's kind of funny about this card in some sense is that at 16 fire influence, do you really need the +4 damage? Like if you have Rebuild for 16 power, if you have Flash Fire that deals 16 damage, like you need the +4 influence at that point?
I think it depends on the type of deck you're playing.
Sure,
if you're playing Rebuild deck, no. But if you're just playing a nickel and dime deck.
Sunny? It's really good with this Breaker Blast card.
Oh, yeah? All right, let's continue on. What's the next card you see that's interesting?
Deuce's Wild. I think Deuce's Wild the dream with Deuce's Wild. Deuce's Wild is a 2 in a fire for a fast spell. Give one of your units +2/+1 this turn. If you have another Deuce's Wild in your void, draw a card. Really what I do is I want to live the draft dream where I draft 6 of these and then I can just keep drawing cards. But I think constructed it could, depending on what eventually maybe someday what's released in the future, but giving it +2/+1 and drawing a card is not bad. It's a pretty good rate if you can get the second one out, that is.
I am pretty skeptical about this card. I will say, I love the art, and I love how there's this gambling sub-theme in
I know, I don't understand it.
It comes out of nowhere, but it's hilarious. A lot of these cards have gambling artwork. I think that we have a lot of really good pump spells just like readily available in Eternal, and they sometimes see play, and I think they're just better than this one.
Yeah, that's probably the case. The thing about like an aggro deck is would you rather have +2/+1 and draw a card, or +4/+0 and Overwhelm? You'd probably still rather the +4/+1 and Overwhelm rather than drawing a card in a lot of situations. So
I agree. Harness Thrill Seeker, do we think that this is going to make the cut? It's the first of many Frenzy 2
Oh,
drops.
so for those of you just watching, so you encounter a new mechanic. Frenzy is a new keyword. It's on I think mostly on units is a keyword that says if the enemy does something when you or a non-attacking unit hits the enemy player. So a relic weapon hits the enemy player, does something. When combat damage through attacking with units hits the enemy player, doesn't do something. So it's a very it feels like it's going to play intuitively, but it definitely is not mechanically readable.
Yeah. Also, things like Nightfall or them hurting themselves does not trigger Frenzy.
No, hurting themselves does actually work. So
Oh, it does?
impending doom does trigger frenzy. So if you've been investing in impending dooms, if you own a bunch of them, their stocks are falling rapidly. But no, so
Speaking of
hardest
stocks falling rapidly, anyway, continue.
Hardest Steel Seeker is 2 and a fire for a 3/1 frenzy flying this turn. I always think about this for draft purposes because it seems like just a fine draft card, a pirate adept that can flying. But I guess in constructed, expedition potentially, I'd be surprised if it saw play in Throne though.
Yeah, I think we'll see the other frenzy cards. I think they're better than this one.
Yeah. So just because I think it's relevant for cycle purposes, Hour of Shavka is not necessarily a card I think is great by itself. So there's a cycle of hours for each faction. They all are 2-cost relics, one of each of their influence, and they have summon. Draw the relevant sigil from their deck. So it's kind of like a Seek Power, except that it also has the relic attached to it. And they also all have a pay 6 effect. Now, Hour of Shavka's is pretty bad in my opinion, so I'm not going to discuss it. But the relevant thing about the hours is you think you want to care about the 6-cost effect in some respects. Like the time one, I think, is the best in that way. But really, with hours, you want to be able to take advantage of having a relic in play, either for sacrificing it or for having just extra relics in play. And I think that will be the deciding factor on which hours are good or not. Are there relevant synergies in a deck that wants this sigil out of their deck? Not necessarily their 6-cost effect.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of feel like they're too expensive at 2 because you have to pay 2 on top of whatever you play. Like if you play the Combust that works for relics, it's like Lobotomy or something. To kill a unit, it doesn't cost 1; it really costs 3, and I think that's you can kill. There are a lot of ways you can kill a unit for 3.
Yeah, if these cost 1, oh my god, that'd be insane, but they don't. So, okay, so I'm gonna mention this because I feel obligated to, even though I'm not particularly thrilled about it. Is Loaded Toss. 2 and a fire for a slow spell. Scout, then draw a card. If that card costs 7 or more, create and draw another Loaded Toss. And I feel obligated to because I am the elite volatility fan. I love volatility. This card is not volatility. See, the dream with volatility is that you pay 2 and you draw 8 cards. With Loaded Toss, you're paying 4 to draw 2 cards. You're not paying 2 to draw 2 cards. So I like to draw lots of cards for cheap, not draw lots of cards for lots of power. Plus, the condition is a lot more. Having these have to cost 7 or more is a lot more than 5 or more. Like that's so different. That being said, though, the flavor on Loaded Toss is really good.
Okay, I guess so. I don't think
like
it
it's
comes
craps.
anywhere
Well, because you roll a 7 and you get to roll again. That's really cool.
Okay, that is pretty cool. All right,
yeah.
Next card, Rakano Outlaw has leveled up and become Rakano Arcanist, trading 1 point of health for Frenzy double damage this turn. So 2/1 Frenzy double damage this turn with Quick Draw Warcry. I think this card lives and dies with how difficult or easy it is to trigger Frenzy.
I agree with that statement. I think that the Frenzy is really powerful, though, deceptively so in some respects, because if your opponent sees a fast spell or whatever, and you attack with Rakano Anarchist, can they block with an X4? Because double damage quick draw means that you get to eat anything that has 4 health or less. So it has deceptive utility to it.
I don't know if you really get to eat it. It's not too different from Rakano Outlaw because, like, usually you're pointing a char or something at their face or condemn or whatever. And if you just targeted their unit that was blocking,
that's fair.
It would still, yeah. So
that's fair.
I really just don't think that there are the right enablers for this. If there's something that deals 1 to the opposing player when attacking, which I believe there is, Yeti Snow Chucker or whatever. If there's a better version of that, I think that this could see play. Something that costs 1 or something that costs 3 that has charge.
The one thing that I was hoping we'd see, and I don't know if we did or not, is a combat trick that's like 2 and a fire, give a unit +3/+1, deal 1 damage to enemy player. A combat trick that also is a frenzy trick. But I don't know if we got that or not. But I mean, Expedition. This card will definitely see play in the Fire Aggro Expedition. In Throne, it's maybe possible, but I'd be very skeptical.
Yeah,
I'm gonna say not in Throne. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about Sign of the Reborn. Is our previous promo. Sign of the Reborn is 2 fire for deal 2 damage. If this is played on the enemy player, create and draw Shavkan Flame Reborn. And Shavkan Flame Reborn is 6 that would cost 6 fire influence, by the way. And it has plus attack equal to your fire influence, and your other fire units have +1 attack, and it summons Invoke. So at base rate, it's kind of like a 6-cost 6/6 summon Invoke Fire, which is pretty decent. So the deal 2 damage means you can either kill a unit, or if the opponent's not playing things that Sigil Cyan kills, then you can draw a expensive card advantage engine. If expensive card advantage engines are ever playable again, I think this card's pretty decent. I wish it was a fast spell, but overall, I really like the card. I think the design's really cool, and I hope it's good.
I mean, I guess you can just like target them, and then like, if you're playing a burn deck, maybe you have some extra fodder that you need for Jack or for market access or something like that. But I'm pretty low on this card. 2 damage to the opposing player. It doesn't move the needle very much.
It does trigger Frenzy and gives you the card advantage, so it's not irrelevant that way either. I think I think the card has interesting flexibility to it, where it's good against the aggro decks by just killing a thing, and it's good against control decks in some sense by presenting a sizable threat that also spreads card advantage. So I think this card could see play. I'm not gonna say it's like the greatest card ever, especially if it's not fast. If it was fast, I'd be like advocating for it way stronger, but still I think it has potential.
My guess with the Frenzy cards is that they are really going to depend on having fast
that's true.
enablers, because that makes them so much harder to block.
So speaking of slow Frenzy enablers, how do you feel about Zealot of Shavkan, a 2 fire 2/2 Oni cultist summon to deal 2 damage to the enemy player?
I don't think it's very good. We already have the 2-cost Grenadin that they get to make a choice if it deals 5 damage or 4 damage to them, or if it gets +4/+4. But that card is like way worse than it seems. I don't think this card's very good either.
Okay, let's move on then. Barbarian Gorillas, how do you feel about that? Do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, killing an enemy attachment for 3 on top of a unit seems like it's pretty good if there's a format that has a lot of attachments. Like this last one with Dino Nest, for example.
Yeah.
If this was available in the same format, I think this would have been quite good.
So, for reference, Barbarian Gorillas is a 3 and a fire for a 3/2 warrior mob. Overwhelm, Unleash, summon, kill an enemy attachment. And because this is our first Unleash card, Unleash reads, when you play this card, create and draw a copy of it. Discard it at the end of turn. Cards with Unleash can't cost less than 1. And no matter how you swing it, there is no way to make a card that with Unleash costs 0. There is 0 ways to do that. You cannot go infinite that way. There are ways to go infinite with Unleash, and we'll get there when they're more relevant, because I don't think 12 Barbarian Gorillas is exactly the payoff you want for Unleash, but...
Yeah. So, we'll see. Depends on attachments in the format. Shall we continue to the display?
Sure.
So, displays are a cycle. Each faction has one. I mean, we've had displays before. They've been multi-faction. But these displays are single faction and require triple influence of that type. So, a display of passion is the fire display. It costs 3, triple fire. Deal 4 damage to the enemy player, or play an ornate katana on one of your units, or deal 5 damage to an enemy unit with endurance or lifesteal. And I kind of feel the same way about all the displays, is that they read kind of underwhelming, but they're going to end up being pretty good. I think that, in a very aggressive deck, a mono fire deck, which is, most of these cards are probably played in a mono or close to mono faction deck, that these are going to be relevant modes and going to be useful, and the flexibility is worth the extra cost in it.
This card almost kills Sandstorm Titan, but it does not kill Sandstorm Titan. It's interesting. The first and second mode have more overlap in some ways than I would like on a display, because Ornate Katana is a +2 plus a weapon that summons draws a card, and your probably going to want to use it on an unblocked attacker for, an extra damage push. And deal 40 damage to players are obviously also an extra damage push. They kind of have more overlap than I'd like on a display type card, which is why in some respects I think this is one of the weaker displays. But I don't think it's necessarily bad either. I think it's probably I think this one out of the 4 that I've seen is probably going to play the better than it looks in a lot of ways. But it's not the most impressive display. But again, I still like the card a lot. I think that all of them are really cool. I just wish this card worked better with Sign of the Reborn for my mono fire control deck.
All right, moving on.
Yeah. Oh wait, what's this card? Experimental Chamber. I've not seen this one.
You may sacrifice, so it's a 3 cost with summon. It's relic. You may sacrifice a non-sentinel unit to play a 5/4 sentinel exhausted. Once per turn, you may pay 2 and exhaust one of your units to scout. I don't think this is very good.
Yeah, it's. I wish it was a non-exhausted sentinel. Being exhausted kind of makes it really painful.
Yeah,
I'm off it.
Like worse than 3 cost 5/5s most of the time.
Yep. Okay, Caleb, Glory Seeker, or should we talk about the adorable Homesick Yeti? Or should we mention that it's adorable, but it's pretty bad?
Yeah, I think it's pretty bad, unfortunately. As much as I would like to dream about Red the High Roller, which is what Homesick Yeti transforms to, and the art is absolutely amazing. It goes from a downtrodden Yeti that's looking really sad to one that is at the table, at the, roulette table or whatever, making tons of money.
So it's such good art. But the one thing I'll say, I mean, this may be for draft specifically, but reducing the top card of your deck seems like a random ability. But this is a set with Unleash, so reducing the top card of your deck when it's an Unleash card, that's actually really good.
Yeah.
But okay, how do you feel about Caleb Glory Seeker? So Caleb Glory Seeker is 3 fire for a 1/5 fire card. Apparently, fire 3-drops get to be 1/5s a lot for some reason. Once per turn, you may pay 3 to discard a random non-power card from your hand. Caleb gets plus attack this turn equal to its cost. When Het hits the enemy player this turn, draw that card from your void. I'm not the biggest fan of Caleb.
Okay, so first of all, it discards from your deck, not your hand.
Oh, deck! Oh, I misread that. Okay.
And
Okay, I'm suddenly way more into this.
When he hits, I guess, is what there's a typo on this card. Yeah. Draw that card from your void.
Never mind. From your deck. I read that as hand. Oh my goodness, that's way better. I mean, I don't know if it's... Okay, never mind. Let me think of this again. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't think it's good. What if you paid 3 and you discard a torch or something, and then it's a 2/5, and it just gets, stonewalled by something. Or if it is something big, they can chump block it so that, if it's a spell that you want. I think the fact that it costs 3 to activate this ability makes it not so good.
The issue with it costs... Sorry.
Yeah, there might be some, really cool synergy with it that we're not thinking of. But in Fire, I can't think of any, natural use cases.
Yeah, the issue with it costing 3 is that it's random. So being random means you can't control it. I know that's pretty obvious because that's what words mean, but it's worth being stated that random means it's not controllable. If you can't control it, it means you can't use this to set up some sort of insane combo because it either can hit your combo piece or it can hit your Torch or Defiance that you're trying to stabilize with. And the issue there is that paying 3, the play pattern it kind of is play Caleb on 3, next turn pay 3 to use its ability, and then you have 1 power left over. That's basically taking up all of turn 4 effectively. It's close to a pay 4 in some respects because you can play Torch and get a little bit of tempo that way, but it's kind of a turn 3, turn 4 play pattern, which is not the greatest.
Yeah, I think this is cool design, but probably not going to make a big splash.
Speaking of cards that definitely aren't going to make a big splash, we have Soulfire. Soulfire is 3 fire for an Unleash fast spell with the simple 3 words of deal 3 damage.
I don't know if you can reduce the cost on this, and if you're going big with Rebuild, maybe it's the combo piece for that deck.
We need to go big with Rebuild. If you reduce the cost to 1 and you have 6 power, you just dealt 18 face damage, which is pretty close to lethal, all things considered.
Yeah,
So
I think this could be a combo card. It could be.
And there's a lot of ways. There's more ways to reduce cost. There's obviously the Avasaur, who reduces the cost by 2 and puts it back on top of your deck. There's also Valley Spring, which is Valley Spring is from the last mini set, I believe, and it's a relic in Elysian that says whenever you create and draw a card, reduce its cost by 1. So the first Soulfire will cost the same amount, but the second Soulfire will cost 1 less because Unleash creates and draws a card in your hand, and so every card after the first Unleash card costs 1 less. So there's a lot of interesting ways to potentially reduce costs. Now, of course, being combo means that it might be inconsistent, but the thing that I like Soulfire as far as a combo piece is concerned is that if you just have sort of a plan B of combo or whatever, Soulfire is just, it's not the best rate ever, right? It's not necessarily a good rate, but 3 for 3 damage, 6 for 6 damage is fine and constructed. Like it's not great, but like as a fail case, it's not a for example, Trail Stories as a combo piece is a card that when you're not comboing off does absolutely nothing. But Soulfire as a combo piece actually can keep you alive and is relevant in the game state. So I don't hate the card even as a fail case, which is why I like the card.
Yeah, I agree with you. This could be the combo like finisher for those types of decks. All right, let's move on. And I totally forgot about that Elysian relic. It is a relic, right? Yeah, but that seems with Unleashed, now you can see what they were doing with it.
So the thing about the Elysian relic also that makes it, in some respects, I think maybe better than Trail Stories, although it makes it cost still the first one full price, is it has at the start of your turn invoke Elysian, which means that unlike Trail Stories, it is card neutral, presuming you get to a second turn with it.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't think Invoke's worth anything?
If you're playing a combo deck, I think Invoke is not a card.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue.
Armaments Collector. We have a good collector. We haven't had many of those in Eternal. Jokes.
I am not hot about this. Flying away of a relic, so it could be a 3/2 flying, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards when you entomb.
It's so Armaments Collector is 4 and a fire for a 3/2 Valkyrie. Summon, draw 2 cards, entomb, discard 2 cards, and it sometimes has flying. And I think it's a very interesting effect. We have never seen a card like this before. It is pretty low stat line, but like drawing 2, discarding 2 is not a bad effect as we've seen in the past on cards like Crafty Occultist. So I think this card has potential.
Yeah, you might actually be right. The thing is that, like, unlike Crafty Occultist, you can't just play it with an open hand and draw 2. What you can do is you can draw the cards, then play them, and then if it dies when you don't have a hand, then you're set. It might be better than I'm giving it credit for, but
it also works in the self-silence deck. If you're trying to silence your own stuff, it works in that deck.
I haven't seen that be successful at all. I think this costs 1 more than it needs to in order to really make a splash. But yeah, it might be better than I originally thought it was.
I would agree that at 3 it would be like really like insanely playable like Crafty, but 3 is very different than 4 though, is the thing, right? So okay, so Hunting Dragon. Hunting Dragon is 4 fire for a 5/4 reckless summon. Give Hunting Dragon flying or taunt. And I guess we technically brought over taunt when we had it last. Taunt is this unit must be blocked if possible. So if the opponent has any amount of units, they have to at least block a unit with taunt with at least 1 unit. So how do you feel about Hunting Dragon eating this cow?
Yeah, the art is kind of ridiculous, but I think this is worse than Crimson Firemaw, which hasn't seen play in a long time. If I'm getting the name right, it's the 5/4 that reduces the top card of your deck by how much you attack. That card's really good, and it just doesn't seem play because it doesn't have initiative the right way.
In Throne, this card's unlikely. What about Expedition, though?
Yeah, maybe. If there aren't good answers for it, and if you just, like, the taunt picks you apart, maybe, but I don't think so. Like, it doesn't have that many options for its play pattern.
Okay.
Like, you can't block with it. I just think that there's... I don't think it's going to work out as well as, the dream case that people are coming up with.
I will trust your judgment on fire aggressive cards.
I don't even know if this is a fire aggressive card. I mean, I guess it's kind of like Siege Train, but like compare this to
Maybe
Siege Train.
Sonny, is this the card for my heavy fire control deck I'm speculating about? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, like I think it would be more of like a Skycrag Chonkers card as we're
Speaking
referring.
of cards for heavy fire control decks, we have a Gift of the Daimyo is 5 fire for a relic. At the start of your turn, create and draw a random weapon, then discard it at the end of your turn. If you have no units, play a 2/2 Oni Grunt Exhausted. So the nice thing about Gift is that the weapon you draw is always playable, provided you have enough power to actually play it out, because you will always have at least one unit in play. And so I really like that aspect of the card.
Seems way too slow.
It's probably too. I mean, I wish it didn't. Again, another relic, another card that puts exhausted units into play, right? Just like Experimental Chamber. Coming to play exhausted is definitely a major downside of this card. If the Oni came into play unexhausted, like just a regular came into play, it would be a lot better.
Yeah, then you get to block every single turn.
Yeah, so which is probably why it doesn't. But I like the card. I hope it. I want it to be good, but the other thing about this is, as Sonny said, it's a slow card, and if we live in a combo format, then a slow value engine is not where you want to be.
All right, the next card that stood out to me is Full Tilt. Just because it's it's a fire sweeper, so it's a 6-cost double fire spell. Each unit deals damage to itself equal to its attack. We haven't really had a fire sweeper, have we? Not one that's pure fire. So I think this
I don't think so.
Gives certain decks options, like the mono fire control deck that Stormblessed keeps talking about. Plus the art is another one of those gambling arts, and it's super cool.
Yeah, the art's really good. The guy's tilting the table. I mean, it's also great to have a card called Full Tilt in Eternal, because now you can just crack jokes about people going full tilt or whatever. You can also let me just wait. It's gonna take a second. 1 second. I can also do. You can bear with me, chat. There we go, Sonny.
Oh my god, now I have to scroll through my entire... So Stormblessed just sent me a message that says Full Tilt, and I have to scroll through all of my friend requests that I ignore. Oh, I see. Okay, but it shows up as a card.
You can send people Full Tilt.
Okay, you'll have to go onto YouTube in order to see this.
Okay, but so
mass production?
I was gonna say just briefly, like only for like 3 seconds talking about it, but we have a cycle of rares that have inscribed. They're the only card with inscribe in the set. Hallow Tip Spray is 6 fire. Inscribe, kill all enemy relics, then deal 6 damage to the enemy player. And the only reason it's interesting is because it has the word inscribe on it. Having inscribe makes it interesting. There need to be a very specific deck, though, that's probably an aggressive deck that would care about the 6 damage, and one that wants to potentially be able to deal with relics, and one that would care about having, this is their one inscribed card in an aggressive deck.
Or a combo deck. But
Sure.
Okay, so I've actually been playing a lot of volatility recently, which is very embarrassing to admit to. But you already have that 5-cost card that says take an additional turn after this one. It's Demand Death, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take an additional card. It costs 5. I think it's better than this one most of the time, unless you're just like playing several of these Halo Tip Sprays directly at the opponent most of the time.
In a volatility deck, I can see this as like a one-of, because it can be hard to get up to a critical threshold of volatility targets, and like you probably don't want to have like a bunch of them. But if you have one of this and you just happen to either draw it regularly or off volatility, you won't ever be like too disappointed. But mass production, though, that's a sexy one. Do you want to read mass production for us?
All right, mass production is a 7-cost quad fire spell. It says draw 7 cards at the end of your next turn, discard your hand. Frenzy, if mass production is in your hand, reduce its cost by 1. So if you are pinging your opponent time after time after time, this will be cheap, and then you'll get a windfall of new cards. Very good with auto tread, and I think that can be said about a lot of cards. Good with auto tread. Argenport Instigator tends to ping the opponent several times. Those decks aren't usually looking for cards like this, but this definitely has a lot of potential to do broken things, drawing lots of cards for little amounts of power.
Yeah, I think your goal with this card is to either play it for 3 or 4. Like if you can play it for 0, that's obviously like, oh, I played 0 cost draw 7. But like if you can play this for 3 or 4, I think you should be happy with that as well. It's got a lot of fire influence though. It has the 4 fire influence. Maybe it's this heavy fire control deck, right? Draw a bunch of cards, heavy fire, frenzy. The obvious downside with mass production is that in order to reduce its cost, it has to be in your hand. So as a top deck, it's never going to be that great, and you wanted to have it in your opener. But in your opener, it's also not necessarily that great because then it's just a clunky card in your opener. Yeah. So it has insane potential. I mean, drawing 7 to have a full grip for a full turn is, ludicrously powerful, but it definitely comes with a deck building and gameplay cost associated.
Yeah, the fact that it has to be in your hand during the parts of the game when you can't play it is probably not a good sign. Those types of cards don't usually turn out well.
Yeah, so speaking of 7 cost cards that win the game, we have Striding Skyline. Striding Skyline is 7 fire for a Sentinel mob. It is a 7/7 with Overwhelm and Unleash. It's like, wow, Unleash on a 7 cost card? That makes no sense because I have to have 14 to play it twice. But it has another effect. Summon. You may sacrifice a relic to get +7 power this turn. So if you have 3 relics in play, you can play 4 of these Striding Skylines, and you will have 28 of stats for 7 power. And if you can give them charge somehow, you can attack for 28 charge damage.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to get charge. Well, charge on all your units, charge on a bunch of units. And this is actually something that I've been trying to do with Moment of Creation. But you know what? If you can get enough power, like, especially since this is single faction, if you can make some sort of deck that uses the fire side, I forget what it's called, but it's a 5 cost
Inferno
fire
Den.
Huh?
Inferno Den.
Inferno Den. So if you can do that, that gives your units charge and then get up to Striding Skyline and you just have a bunch of relics in play, then you win the game.
The card I was thinking of was Practice Arcanum, because Practice Arcanum not only makes the first Striding Skyline cheaper, it also makes your relics cheaper, and it gives Striding Skyline charge in hand.
Ooh, that does sound good. And you're probably, like, if you're doing a relic deck, you're probably pairing it with time. That sounds really cool.
And of course, we have a new time card we'll be seeing eventually that also is a flexible option that can also give things charge in hand.
Ooh, I really like that. Okay, cool.
We'll get there.
I want to try it out.
Okay, but that is the end of our fire cards. Our first time card we're going to discuss is we're going to skip the Resettle because it looks like complete trash.
Wait. There's got to be a really jank just dump everything on the board on turn one.
I guess I will say what Resettle is. Resettle is 0 and a time for a spell. Each unit you played this turn gets +1/+1. And I think it looks terrible.
I don't know. Like, if you get enough effects that are, like, cheap, and, like, cheap ways of getting units out, this type of effect can be kind of scary. I agree that this card is probably terrible the way that we have things set up right now, but even if you just play a 2/2 and 2 3/3s on turn 1, that's going to kill a fair number of people. Regardless.
Are you playing a 2/2 and 3/3s on turn 1?
Well, like, you're playing a 1/1 and a 2/2 and a 2/2. I don't know how you're doing that, but
on turn 1?
On turn 1, yeah, sure. Well, I mean,
if you're doing that, you're probably already in great shape if you can play out that much stuff on turn 1 somehow.
Well, yeah, anyway.
The funny thing is this card, there's Lumen Defender, Lumen Shepherd, which is you play this turn. The funny thing about Lumen Shepherd and Resettle is if you're on the draw, then you can't actually give the buff to the Lumen Shepherd token with Resettle.
That is pretty funny.
You have to be on the play to make that work, unfortunately.
Okay, continue. Gravitor Training? Okay, so, I think this one's kind of interesting.
I think that card looks awesome. I really like Gravitor Trainee.
Yeah, it's a good way for Void Synergy decks or Reanimator decks in order to get additional power, which is something that they generally have a difficult time doing, and filling their void with exactly what they want from their hand.
One at a time for a 1/1 flying. Summon, you may discard a card of your choice. You may discard a card to draw a sigil of your choice from your deck. So it turns any card in your hand into a Seek power. Yes, it means you have to play a Humbug in your deck, but if you have basically you want to have void synergies, right? You don't just place it in a regular deck. Any deck with void synergies, though, I am interested in this.
Yeah, seems pretty good. Shall we continue?
So how do you feel about Stutter Step versus Phase Out? Do you think Stutter Step's worth discussing?
I think Phase Out is better. It's weird that we have phasing in Eternal. Stutter Step is a 1-cost fast spell that says make a unit disappear. It reappears at the start of the next turn. When it does not play summon effects and keeps its attachments. So it's basically phasing, I think.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? This is a much better defensive option, like to protect your own units.
Phase Out is slow and this card is fast.
Yeah. As far as getting attacks in, Phase Out is a lot better, but I don't know. This might have potential.
I think overall, I'd rather have Phase Out in most decks, but I think that it's playable.
Yeah.
Speaking of playables, we have Zoltan Elderbark is 1 at a time for a Summon Scout relic, and it has when you play a unit with 4 health or more, sacrifice it to draw a card. This card is playable, mostly in part because some decks really want to put relics into the void. There's a lot of synergies with having a relic in the void, and it can be surprisingly difficult to put relics into the void. So this is a card that can very easily get into the void, much easier than a lot of other relics. So that's why I think it's somewhat playable.
I agree with all that. And those types of decks tend to have pretty big units, so getting the unit with 4 health or more shouldn't be too difficult.
It works really well with a Justice card we'll see eventually, I think. The Justice is like a 1/4 that turns into a 4/4. I think that's how that works. All right, there's a combo there. We'll discuss it.
Yeah, Bren's Insight is a 2-cost spell in time. Draw a unit or relic from the top 4 cards of your deck. Discard the rest. More support for some sort of relic and void strategy.
Yeah, this card's a bit rough in some sense because I think it mostly is like more or less playable in Xenon Self-Mill Hourglass, Xenon Hourglass, basically that deck and like nowhere else, because you really got to have enough hits for this to work. And because the thing is, you really have to care about milling power. You have to milling power specifically because you can't guarantee you'll mill a unit that you care about in any regards. So I think you really have to care about hitting a power there. And the fact that it's a spell that doesn't draw itself, it has like Calibrate issues because it's top 4, not top 5. Doesn't hit power like Calibrate does, and it costs 1 more than Calibrate. That being said, though, discarding the other 3 cards and drawing a card, if you care about milling power, is actually pretty damn good. So,
yeah, I mean, you mentioned Hourglass. It helps find Hourglass, and that's a big deal. Like, those decks tend to be extremely reliant on Hourglass to really get going, and this is another way to help you find it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much more to say about it.
We're talking about a lot of time cards. I think even Endangered Kieran, I mean, I'm not going to say
much about it.
I think
Endangered Kieran is actually kind of sweet. Endangered Kieran is 2 at a time for a 2/1 Kieran, flying endurance, +1 maximum power. I think there's definitely like Majestic Skies decks would have loved this card back in the day.
Yeah.
It's a apprentice mage that also can attack and technically block if you really want to. But more importantly, it's a 2 power flyer that provides tempo. If this card sits for 3 turns, if you play this and 3 turns later you win the game, you got an extra 3 power of your opponent, and that's basically like taking an extra turn, kind of. It basically gives you an extra turn, right?
I think that's a bit of a stretch, but as far as aggressive options for this type of effect, it seems to be better than what we have so far.
God, why is every time card playable? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's really what it looks like. Grumbo,
Totem Legend is 2 at a time for a 1/1 Hero Totemite with also adorable art. This art is adorable to set. Grumbo has, when you play another unit, you gain 1 life, and Grumbo gets +1/+1. So if you play this, next turn play Assembly Line, you gain 3 life, and Grumbo's a 4/4.
Yeah, it's also great with like all of those units that have Life Force, like Katra, for example. Yeah. It immediately gives you the Life Force effect of that card.
You play Grumbo, you play Katra. If you play Grumbo into Katra, Katra's a 4/4 and Grumbo's a 3/3, and you gain the life.
Yeah, I was doing a bit of that on stream earlier before you came along, and I was playing what's the one that draws a card? This one also turns that one on. can be difficult to turn it on the turn that you play it. It's 4-cost, 5/3.
Becky Lumen.
Yeah, there we go.
Becky.
Okay. Yeah, and the artwork in this one, I think it's top tier. That is amazing.
So, thankfully, we can skip Grumbo's Platoon because we have Insect Swarm, which is just the better version of it, probably. So how do you feel about Hot Hand? Is that worth discussing?
No.
Okay.
Let's just go straight to Insect Swarm.
So, sure.
So Insect Swarm is a 1/1 flying ambush unleash that costs 2. What do you want to talk about for this one? I mean, it's an unleash card that costs 2, right?
It's an unleash card that costs 2. Having flying and ambush is kind of relevant in some respects because, for example, I've casted a bunch of this. You can see any screenshots, any number of those on Discord or his stream. Is you have like Valley Spring and Insect Swarm, and you have Crown of Possibilities, and every time you play an Insect Swarm, you get a new battle skill. And if you make the cards cost 1, you play like 6 of them in one turn, and you get 6 random battle skills, and you just have an ambush speed, no less. You can do it at the end of the opponent's turn, so they can't really respond to all of the massive insects you've swarmed on them. Plus, if you give this any sort of buff, like a 1/1 or 2/2 buff in hand, and make it like a 3/3, and you play like 4 of them end of turn or whatever, and you make the cost reduce, being ambush is pretty relevant here.
Yeah,
that's it.
This might be the new Crown. Like, I used to play a lot of Crown way back before I started playing like competitively. I used to play a lot of Crown. This might be the new thing to do with Crown.
Plus, Crown, you can no longer like copy things with Crown or something. No, it's like you can't copy Destiny.
Yeah, you can't
but
Destiny.
Like Crown doesn't get like Echo shenanigans anymore because it can't give you Echo. But this card is kind of like the next best thing to do to the Crown these days.
Yeah, maybe taking a turn off just to play Crown and then doing all the other stuff you need. I am skeptical of that.
So next page.
Yes.
Okay, we can probably skip Intruder Alarm.
Yeah. I have to read a lot of these cards.
Okay. I'm interested in Temple Looter, and I'd be willing to skip the other 3 before it.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Temple Looter is 2 time for a 1/1 taunt, ambush, entomb, draw a card. So it's basically a better Dark Wisp. Yes, it requires 2 influence, and Dark Wisp required 1, but I mean, taunt and ambush is so much better than not taunt and ambush that it's just like not even close. I think this card's really cool. We have a Dark Wisp in time that's just significantly better. It's like Temple Scribe, except it has taunt and ambush. Yeah, which is probably better.
It's definitely a reference to Temple Scribe. It's got like the artwork is very similar. I love these throwbacks.
Oh yeah, it's a cool card. I think it actually has like synergy potential and has like potential to. There's never going to be like the standout card, but if there's a deck that works, this card could be like a key part in making the deck cohesive.
Yeah, I'm not too high on it. I just think it's cool.
A card that you probably are a lot higher on is Display of Realities. Is the time display, so it is 3 time for a fast spell with play a 1/1 Scorpion with Deadly, or give a unit in your hand +1/+1 and charge, or kill all relics of the enemy player. So this card fits into that combo deck I mentioned earlier with the 7/7 Sentinel, because you can give it +1/+1 and charge, making an 8/8 charge over 1, which is better. But it also can keep you alive because you can play a Scorpion at fast speed that can block. Is that great? You'd obviously rather not do that, but like being able to be flexible is real key in making this card playable.
Yeah, especially in a deck like that. I think that's pretty key. Having something that can both be one of the parts of the combo and also just keep you alive until then. That's a big deal.
For sure. Just a solid card. There's not really much more to say about it, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the artwork for the next card. Phineas still here. It is hilarious. Oh my god, look at the art for these cards. I think this is
so funny.
I don't know if it's the quality is higher. It does look like the color palette just really pops a lot more than previous sets, but the artwork
is. Oh god, Phineas is he just keeps gambling. He's still at the gambling table. His opponent is like, it's like, you've taken all my chips, and he's like, I got more chips. I'm still here winning chips.
So Phineas does seem pretty good. Phineas is a 3-cost, 2/3 in time. When Phineas takes damage and survives, he gets +1/+1. But Entomb, draw an attachment from your void. If it costs less than or equal to Phineas's attack, play it instead. So if you're doing some sort of self-mill deck and you really need that hourglass in your void, and you have Phineas, you play it and he dies, you get the hourglass for free. Or if you're doing something else, you can maybe build him up to be big and then get a relic from the void for free.
I wish Phineas was a 2/4 because then it would work really well with Zoltan Eldermark, because you could play Phineas, then Zoltan Eldermark triggers and sacrifices itself to draw a card, and then Phineas would die and would immediately replay the Zoltan Eldermark, which you could then draw another card off of eventually. Yeah. Would be cool. But that. I mean, you still get to draw the Zoltan Eldermark though, presumably it's in your void. I think that it's very interestingly powerful, right? Because it has the drawing a specific card from your void. I could also see it eventually not being as good as like a Templar, just draw a card, right? It's like a 3-cost Templar, so you really have to care about drawing the attachment back from your void, which is possible. It depends on if there are cards like Zoltan Eldermark that can get to the void easily that you would love to recur.
Yeah, I think that's key. We were talking about it's difficult to get relics in the void. This is very dependent on your ability to do that.
Okay, so we got Hexavore now is 3-time for a 4/4 Overwhelm Dinosaur, and that's the important part of the card. But I'll read the rest of it anyways. Hexavore can never be stolen. Wow, random hate text on a time card. Never seen that before in Eternal. If the enemy player makes you discard Hexavore from your hand, play it from your void. So the real part of the second piece is the opponent goes turn 1 Zito and then immediately loses the game. That's how this card works.
Yeah, this card seems pretty good. I think that it's going to be like mostly Expedition only, unless you have some Dinosaur deck and Throne that works really well. But it's going to attack for 4. It's going to randomly win games, or I guess really it's going to shove things like that cause people to discard cards from their opponent's hand or deck. It's going to push that out of the meta because I think it's just going to be a pretty good beater.
Well, it's not Ire. It doesn't work when discarded from deck. It only works when discarded from hand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. That's not quite as good as I thought it was, but I think it's still going to be a reasonable.
I mean, as I said, it's a 3-cost 4/4 Overwhelm. Next card.
Yeah.
Let's see what's Insatiable Bug. I've never seen this card before. I don't like it. That card seems bad. Strike It Rich also seems bad. Doomhill Clan seems like a draft card. A cool draft card, don't get me wrong, but it seems like a draft card. What are you?
Okay, that's like 5/5 Endurance. Like that might be good in Expedition.
Oh, Expedition. Yeah, Expedition. I could see it.
Sizable
I'm
body.
thinking Sandstorm Titan.
Yeah, definitely not Throne, or almost certainly not Throne.
So Doomhill Clan is 4-time for a 5/5 Unleash Endurance. So in Expedition, it's kind of like a Sandstorm Titan, and then if you happen to get to 8 power, it's 2 Sandstorm Titans. In Throne, you're obviously not going to play this for 2 of these on turn 8. And we have Sandstorm Titan in Throne, so you probably don't want this in Throne, but in Expedition, seems eminently playable there.
What do you think about Questioning Devotee? It's a 4-cost 1/1 with Summon. Put another unit into its owner's hand, and then the ultimate is if it deals damage and survive, transform into Mother Zora.
I think it looks like complete garbage.
Okay.
Because it's a 4-cost 1/1 with teleport, and it has to deal damage and survive, so your opponent can't ever block. I mean, maybe there's like a bunch of ice bows that are really cheap in the set that we haven't seen yet, maybe, but like, and then you really want an ice bow because otherwise you play Question Devotee, attack with it. They can't block, then it survives, and then finally the turn afterwards you get the buff. So it's like 3 turns later you get a buff on your units.
But if there are any cards that say your units deal 1 damage to something.
No, if there is a significant amount of those at cheap prices, not like Ice Boats cost 3, then maybe, but we haven't seen any yet, right? Like we haven't seen any in Fire. That's where I'd expect them. Maybe Primal. But the card I'm thinking of is the card right next to it though. Praxis Duster is 4-time for a 3/3 charge ambush. Summon +3/+3 this turn. I think that's actually like I was like, oh, that's cute, and then I thought about it some more, and I was like, wait a minute. If you just like block your opponent's 5/5 endurance unit or whatever, and you get to kill it and then keep a 3/3 next turn, like, would you play a 4-cost, card to kill an enemy unit, play a 3/3? I would.
Yeah, the ambush charge is weird, but I guess that means it's just like a 6/6 attacking or blocking when you play it.
Yeah.
And it has
it's a
initiative.
It's a weird card, but I think, like, would you play 4-cost, deal 6 damage to a unit, play a 3/3? I think I would.
Yeah, I think you're right. This does seem pretty good. And this is if you can lower the cost on this one, this might be a good candidate for just killing someone, like with Unleash. Oh wait, it doesn't have Unleash. Why do I think it has Unleash? I read Ambush and saw the SH. Okay, never mind. Yeah, but it does seem...
yeah.
Okay.
It's certainly like Expedition. I think this card will actually be well, maybe not surprising at this point, but potentially surprisingly playable in Expedition as like it's a lightning strike that leaves behind a 3/3 body, which seems value. Okay, do you think Valley Whisper is interesting, or do you think it's not interesting?
Nah, that's too expensive.
Okay. Gift of the Arcanum is our really sad time legend, and it's not worth discussing because it's so tragic.
Yep.
Wandering Hamlet's probably also similarly tragic, and we can just ignore it. Rewind. So I'm just going to Rewind for just a second here as like a surprisingly disappointing card. We have 10 cost time. So quad time for a spell. Unleash Voidbound. Take an additional turn after this one. So it's like a Soul's Rest that costs 2 more, but you have the dream of reducing this card's cost down so you can just take like 10 turns in a row. My only issue with this is that, like, you can either take 10 turns in a row or you can just Soulfire your opponent for 30 or whatever, right? Where it's like you could just Soulfire your opponent for like 1 billion damage. That being said, though, I do think there'll be fun to be had living the dream of taking just a bunch of turns in a row. But competitively, there's just ways you can win the game immediately with Unleash rather than having to take 4 turns and then winning the game then.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, like if you could get twice. Yeah, okay. I can't think of a situation where this is better than the deal 6 to someone.
Yeah. So Sonny, you liked Resettle. What if you played a bunch of units in one turn and then also resettled to get all +1/+1, and then also better than ever to give them each a random battle skill?
Nope, I would rather have +1/+1 because they're probably small and battle skills tend to scale with how big the unit is. So small units with battle skills generally not very good.
Okay. Let's see what cards are interesting from Justice. Aerial Deployment is uninteresting. Midnight Tinker is a card I haven't seen before. It is also uninteresting.
Wow. We were talking about all the time cards, and I feel like these Justice cards, not too exciting.
Pull up is almost interesting for those of you on stream. Rivet's Wrench is almost interesting for those of you on stream. If Rivet's Wrench didn't have the pay 2, I'd be like, this is a really cool Unleash card because you could play an Unleash card for all its value, and then you have, you can discard the extra copy in hand. But that gets to pay 2 means you might as well just like play a second Unleash card out instead of paying 2.
Yeah.
I guess Scornful Elite is kind of playable. Scornful Elite is 2 and a Justice for an 0/4 Aegis. When the enemy player plays a unit, it gets -4 attack until the start of their next turn. And the playability here is that it's just a nice, solid defensive option where it stops charge units, which is relevant. It also just blocks pretty well, and it doesn't die very easily because it's an 0/4 with Aegis, and the opponent presumably isn't going to want to kill it because it's just an 0/4 with Aegis. And theoretically, you could also play it with cute synergy effects. There's a number of ways to make things they're like benefiting if they have small attack. For example, like I believe They All Fall would work really well with this, whereas 1 or less attacks, you'd steal the enemy unit, and then because it goes back to having more attack, it works with that kind of effect. But fine.
Yeah, I had to think about that for a while. I think this card's not very good. They All Fall is interesting, but we've had a bunch of cards that have some sort of like they're not bad, but they end like 0/5s, like the new Seraph. I say new, but like the Seraph that has Twist or something, right? Like,
Yeah,
that's a pretty powerful effect, but at the end of the day, it's a 0/5 and it doesn't do anything for a while. So I think those types of cards just generally are not very good.
Yeah, I mean, Aegis is relevant though. Like Seraph died. Like if you're playing against an aggro deck, Seraph just gets annihilated or whatever, right? It dies. But Scorpio isn't gonna die. It's gonna block for a very long time. That being said, though, it is just a 0/4 that doesn't really even have an impact in the same way that 0/5 Seraph does because it's not gonna win you the long game. So do you think Spectral Armor is one cost too expensive to be considered and constructed?
Yeah.
Okay. Suspicion is also one cost too expensive to be considered and constructed.
So talking about Spectral Armor, I'm not going to go over the card, but it's kind of like Bubble Shield, except it doesn't target, so it's not good with Kira. So.
Oh, it is your units are vulnerable. It doesn't even target. Ugh,
yeah.
Gross. Tinker Unionist, I think, is worth discussing at least for expedition purposes.
Yeah.
Tinker Unionist is 2 and a Justice for a 2/2 Taunt Warcry, and it has Unleash if you have a Relic. So if you have a Relic, you can just play an army of Unions. The Union is here if you got a Relic. That being said, though, it's also just still a 2-cost 2/2 Taunt Warcry on turn 2 in Expedition. So I think this card is very fine.
Yeah, 2/2 Taunt Warcry. Like if your opponent plays an Initiate of Sands or something and doesn't have follow up, or cards that are similar to that, where they are small but they don't attack or block. They want to keep them in play. It could be pretty good against that.
Sunny, I found the playable Justice cards.
Yeah, me too. Display of Law, Triple Justice, 3-cost fast spell. Kill an enemy unit without battle skills, or give one of your units double damage, or play a Justice Sigil for your deck. I think the first ability is not, or the first mode is not great here, but the next two can be pretty good.
The interesting thing about a lot of these cards, like Display of Law, and we'll see like the Primal one later is also a key like this, is they seem to actually really be literally like 3-cost cards that haven't seen play otherwise, right? Like, we really haven't seen many. The only one that was playable was Display of, bullshit. The one that plays a power from your deck, right? But these 3-cost play a sigil from your deck cards have never been really playable at fast speed. The only one that's playable is like Enter the Monastery, right? But like give one usable damage is like a trick that never was playable. Fall Short, never playable. But is the collection of Fall Short, play Justice Sigil, and give you double damage playable? I think it really could be. I think these plays are really interesting. Fall Short's not playable, but is Fall Short that's also a play Justice Sigil playable? Yeah. And the other thing I want to mention about these displays while we're on this one is if you're playing any of these displays in your market, my hot take is that you are incorrect, with the maybe exception of Display of Law in a Crescendo market. But otherwise, I think if you're playing any of these displays in a market, I think you are doing it really incorrectly. Displays are main deck cards or not playable.
Yeah, you're right. The options are... Market cards are generally better when they're specific. Main deck cards are generally better when they are flexible. I mean, this card might be fine. I don't have strong opinions about it. Like, yeah, I could see it seeing play. Someone in chat mentioned that it can kill Vikram, which is a big deal.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I think I spent too long talking about Display of Law when it's not the most. Again, it's like the time display of the Pirates play. It's just obviously solid.
Yeah, this one might be not quite obviously solid for me. I think this one feels a little less playable than the other ones we've seen.
So next card I want to discuss is Forensic Analyst. Forensic Analyst is a 3 to Justice for a 1/4 flyer, and is ultimate. When an attachment goes to your void, transform Forensic Analysis into Chief Investigator West. And Chief Investigator West is a 4/4 flyer that when Chief Investigator West attacks, you get 1 armor and you play a 1/1 Valkyrie with flying. And the reason I think it's interesting now, more so than I thought it was before I saw the full set, is we have the card called Zoltan Eldermark, which is when you play a unit with 4 health or more, sacrifice it. So you play Zoltan Eldermark, then you play the Forensic Analyst, and you immediately pop the Eldermark, draw your card, and you get the 4/4 flyer that when it attacks, you get value.
Yeah, seems pretty good. 4 total investment for 4/4 flyer that you get to pay over the course of 2 turns, and that makes additional flyers. I agree with that. That card's
and also compared to cards like Red or the other cards in its cycle, its base value as a 1/4 flyer for 3, while not where you want to be in the world, isn't as bad as a 1/1 for 3, right?
Yeah, it'll keep it alive.
Okay. Mystical Shackles. You want to read about that one?
Yeah, Mystical Shackles. Better Abigraph. 3 cost, single justice, cursed relic. Summon, silence, and kill an enemy unit. Entomb, the enemy player plays a 3/2 soldier. Most of the time, I think this is just going to be silence slay, right? They can go through the process of killing it to get a 3/2 soldier, but like at any point, except maybe the turn that you played it immediately, that 3/2 soldier probably isn't very exciting. So this seems like a really nice removal spell for Justice. Does get blocked by Face Aegis and Unit Aegis, which is definitely worth noting. But I think
unless your deck cares about the number of relics in play or curses in play because they're curse controlled exponential, or the opponent can just really incidentally kill your relics. If the opponent's playing a card to kill this, like a Dismantle, they are effectively putting Argenport Soldier in their deck. And if your opponent's playing Argenport Soldier in the deck, you're very happy with that. So
yeah, especially if it's after turn 2.
Yep. How do you feel about Parliament Elder?
Let me read it.
Sure. It's got a lot of text on it.
Huh. Okay, so 3 cost Justice, 2/4 Flying Unleash. When Parliament Elder hits the enemy player, stun it. When Parliament Elder becomes stunned, play a Justice Sigil from your deck. So I'm not thinking of this playing normally. I'm thinking of if you play this with Imbue. That's interesting. You can also have situations where like you play this on 3, then you play what was it called? Huntmaster or something? No, Huntress. Is that right? The 3/1 with killer?
Maveloft. Yeah.
Yeah, Maveloft Huntress. So you play this, you play Maveloft Huntress, you kill something, and then you attack, and then you get the second Justice Sigil. So it looks like you can get some pretty good value there.
The awkward thing about Parliament Elder in some ways is its Unleash, and kind of, because if your goal is to play an Imbue card on it, it's like, well, do I play the Maveloft Huntress, or do I play the second copy of Parliament Elder? It's like, do I get my value now, or do I get different value now? It's a weird card, though. It's very weird. I lean towards it. I mean, it's got Unleash, though, and Unleash is powerful, so I lean towards Expedition possible, or even probable, because it does fuel future copies of Parliament Elder, because you play one, and then you can power up your future Unleashes, so I could see this card being an Expedition. I don't think it's Throne playable, though.
Yeah, it probably is just too passive for Throne. It's an interesting card. Definitely can get value from it. And like 2/4 flyer is a not bad stat line for 3 cost unit.
So, Sonny, do you think we should care about a 3 cost 2/2 Rivet?
No.
Okay. Then I'm going to the next whole page of Justice.
I haven't looked through all of these yet.
I scanned them and rejected each of them.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. Resonance Wave is supposed to have Inscribe, by the way.
Oh, it doesn't have Inscribe. Oh.
Yeah, silence an enemy relic.
Well, if it has Inscribe, I like it.
+6/+6 on slow spell.
If it has Inscribe, I like it a tiny amount.
Yeah.
As being like the Fire Inscribe card, where it's like, in Expedition, if you want one Inscribe card in an aggro deck, you could do worse than Resonance Wave as your Inscribe card to go past 25 power.
Yeah.
Have you read Shenra yet?
I am reading Shenra. Interesting. Okay, so like it's a 4 cost, 5/4 endurance, double justice. Weapons and curses can't be played on Shenra because they have never been able to be played on Shenra. And you and your units are invulnerable to damage this turn on summon. I guess it's really best when you're trying to get an attack in, and then it's a 5/4 endurance for 4, which is like big. Doesn't seem spectacular to me.
It might be good in Expedition, but even then, I'm like, I don't know. It costs a lot and doesn't. It's a 5/4. It looks clunky as a card.
Yeah, if you can play a relic weapon and protect it on 3, and then play this, and then be able to attack something with that relic weapon, maybe there's something going on there. But that's generally not a very reliable way of doing things, you know.
It does have you in your units. I mean, it could. I think Expedition, it could very easily get there. I don't think it's going to get there in Throne.
Yeah.
So this card's not good, but I want to discuss it because it's funny. Is Notarin's Ledger is 5 justice, justice, justice for a cursed relic. When an enemy unit attacks, the enemy player takes 1 debt, which is really funny. That's all.
Is there a joke I'm supposed to be getting here, or is it funny because it's bad?
It's funny because it's just like, I mean, maybe it's just funny because it's bad, but it's just like, I just like the idea of it being like, you attacked, you gotta pay the price for attacking. I guess it's just kind of like a Ghostly Prison if you know Magic the Gathering, except worse.
Except worse because Ghostly Prison makes them pay 2 and it costs 3.
And it also makes them pay before they attack. So they can't
it prevents attacks. Yeah.
Yeah, when you put it that way, I guess it's just bad. Not even that funny. Okay, let's not talk about bad cards. Let's talk about good cards. Fall of the Spire is a good card. Fall of the Spire is 3 justice, justice, justice for a spell. Kill all units. So it's a harsh rule that costs 1 extra justice. But on each player's next turn, that player can't play non-power cards with the same name as a card in their void.
Yeah, that seems pretty good to me. I mean, that seems better than Harsh Rule. I'm sure there's going to be decks that are playing Harsh Rule now that would rather play this.
So the downside, Sonny, is, for example, say you have a Fall of the Spire in your void. Already you have 2 in your hand. You play Fall of the Spire. Next turn, you cannot play the 3rd Fall of the Spire because it's both players are affected by this.
Yeah, it's both players, but I think it still favors the control player most of the time.
I would agree. Yeah. I just think it's interesting to note that it is symmetrical effect. It's one of those symmetry makes it balance things. In this case, it actually has more of an impact than other symmetrical effects have.
Yeah. I don't like cards like this. The cards that punish you for like drawing multiples of the same card or something, like Abergraph. Yeah, I feel like it just randomly feels really bad sometimes.
The reason I think it's somewhat okay on this compared to Abergraph is that it's only for 1 turn, right? It's 1 turn. And that's where I think it's fine. I think if you just temporarily stop people from playing, I think that's okay. But I think Abergraph, which makes it so they draw a card and they just feel bad for the rest of the game, is not okay. Aura Blade looks like garbage to me.
Gift of Coastal doesn't look too good either.
So Gift of Coastal is 7 justice, justice for when you play a spell, give one of your units +2/+2, and it has summon. Play Sevetia's Decree, defend the treasury, or Coastal Battle Mage. Now, the funny thing is, when I first saw this card, I thought it had there's that 7-cost justice spell that has you have 1 life, you get a relic weapon, and you play 2/3 Minotaurs. You know that one?
Yeah, it's like Last Stand at the Gates or something. I also thought that's what this card played.
Yeah, so I thought this card played Last Stand at the Gates, and I said, oh man. If you play Last Stand at the Gates, you give it the +2/+2 to one of the Minotaurs, and then on BK was like, it doesn't play that card, and I was like, I'm an idiot. And BK literally said that the first time he showed this design to someone, they also thought this played Last Stand at the Gates. So that's really funny that everyone makes that mistake, apparently. I don't know what it is about this card that makes you think it plays Last Stand at the Gates, but it definitely does invoke that for some reason.
Yeah, defend the treasury somehow. Okay.
That being said, though, a 7-cost Coastal Battle Mage is not where I want to be in the world.
No. More gambling cards?
Check raise. It's got good art.
It does. Okay, so check raise is 1 cost, double primal, fast spell, negate an enemy spell unless the enemy player pays 3. And I think this is the card that you want protecting your combo if you're playing a combo deck.
So the one thing we'll note now that we're here on a negate spell is that negate does stop unleash spells. If you negate the first Soulfire, they don't get the second Soulfire in hand. Which is good, because it means that there's a check on Unleash. Otherwise, you're just like, oh, I don't care if you negate Soulfire, because I got 7 more to play.
And they all cost 1. Yeah, but I think... Yeah. I mean, if they have that, then they probably get to play most of them anyway. But in any case, this is... Because almost all fast spells, if you negate them unless they pay 3, they won't be able to play. It's so hard to hold up your fast spell and 3 additional power. So it negates almost all fast spells. And then, it's going to randomly be able to negate a slow spell when at an opportune point some of the time. So I think this is a really nice protection spell for combo decks.
I also like that it just provides different options for deck building. Do you want Obstruct the Flicker, or do you want Check Raise? They're just 2 different cards that have different modes and different options, right?
Yeah.
Okay, how do you feel about this next one drop? I've never seen this in one drop before. Yeti Pugilist is 1 and a primal for a 1/2 Yeti. Reckless, so it has only upside from there because you can't make mistakes with this card. Frenzy, +2/+2 this turn. And if there's one deck that can deal Frenzy really easily, like say Wump Party Starter, that would trigger Frenzy, you get a +2/+2. Plus, you can even trigger it multiple times in a turn to get multiple +2/+2s.
Yeah, I was talking about this on stream earlier. This card it has really high upside, but it also has pretty bad downside. I mean, if you play this and on turn 2 they just play, 2/2 and you don't have a way of triggering Frenzy, that's no bueno.
Reckless is an upside keyword, Sonny. It means you can't make a mistake. You have to attack.
But I mean, those Yetis decks also have a lot of ways of clearing the way for it. So like maybe you just don't run into the issues with its downside quite so much. This could be really bad on the draw, but I think that this card is going to be another good one drop for Yetis.
Ironically, this card might be one of the best one drops in Yetis. That is the worst on turn 2 specifically. On turn 3 plus, you can pretty reliably get its Frenzy in the Yeti deck, but turn 2 specifically, it might be difficult.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny. Okay. I've never seen Hydrate before. It's not good, but it is funny. just give it a drink.
Yeah, it gives it a little help. Yeah.
Is there a combo Sonny with giving things infinite health or something?
That's a good question.
Okay, let's move on to Oxidize though.
Well, I just want to mention Flash Flood.
Go ahead.
It's 4 cost and it's slow, but it is kind of interesting if you're playing
it's 2 cost and slow.
Well, it's basically 4 cost, right? Because you play it for 2. So Flash Flood is a 2 cost spell. Unleash, stun an enemy unit. If it's already stunned, kill it. I guess it can't hit endurance units, but like for an aggro deck, like if you pay 4 to stun 2 units, maybe that's a big deal. Or maybe you need a turn to pay 4 to kill 1 unit. I just think it has the flexibility that if you are in a low to the ground aggro deck, this could actually be a pretty reasonable removal spell.
I don't really see it, mostly because it is expensive. But I will say that costing 2 and not 4 is relevant because you can use it just to stop one thing, right? Which it would come up if you're playing an aggro deck.
Yeah.
Okay, Oxidize. Oxidize is 2 and a primal for a fast spell. Negate an enemy spell that isn't fast, or deal 6 damage to an enemy wielding a weapon. This is probably not playable, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. It's like really specific to the second mode.
It looks like it's almost playable, right? Though it looks super almost playable.
Yeah.
How do you feel about Thunder Pop?
Not a huge
Worth discussing? Okay. Let's see. Should we talk about Tomb of the Azure? I guess we probably should, although I don't know where to go with that card. Tomb of the Azure Mage is 2 and a primal for a relic. Frenzy, draw a card, then discard a card. Ultimate, pay 9 to deal 1 damage to the enemy player for each spell in your void. I feel like this is a card for the batteries of the world to break and not for the Sunnies and Stormblessed.
Yeah, I don't think this one's very good because, well, I guess you can filter through a lot of cards really quickly because it doesn't cost anything. So, is there anything that says deal the damage when you draw a card?
No.
Or deal a damage when you discard a card?
Maybe.
I can't think of any. There might be. If there is, then it's a 2-card combo.
Oh, so you're saying, oh, man, well now Daryl can't print that.
Yeah.
So if it does exist,
it's hard to imagine that existing.
I mean, I can't imagine that either of those effects do exist given this card's existence.
Yeah. But
Display of Survival. Oh, sorry, continue.
Going down a card initially is pretty rough.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, again, you have to want some relic synergies or whatever problem. That's why I'm like, look at the batteries of the world.
Yeah.
But the next card is absurdly powerful, and I haven't seen all the displays yet, so I don't know if there's any better. But this one is my current frontrunner for the best display. Display of Survival is 3 primal, 3 triple primal for a fast spell. You can either transform an enemy unit or non-curse relic into a 1/4 dinosaur, or deal 5 damage to each unit played this turn, or draw a card and gain an Aegis. So it has fast polymorph / form bend. It has that like many hurricane cards that never saw any play, or Lindrise protection. So it has 3 cards that really don't see play much in main decks, polymorph sometimes, but overall having the option for any of them as a flexible card seems really good as like a nice control option.
Yeah, this card seems pretty good to me. I agree with you. It seems like the best one of the displays. The fact that it can just answer any enemy unit is absurd. Now maybe 3-cost cards you can kill things with 3 costs, but it's at fast speed. Like it could mess up your opponent's attacking decision.
It's not just Slay, right? Because making something into a Scaly Grunt is it's not exactly Slay, but it's close enough to Slay, right? For government work.
Yeah.
But it's also form bend, and it's also Lindrise protection, and it's also deal with an Unleash combo. If the opponent plays all of their insect swarms, you can just kill them all.
Yeah, exactly. This is ridiculous. I wouldn't be surprised if they had to touch this card up.
Yeah.
Like if they made the transform into a 3/3 instead of a 1/4 for defensive decks.
Fisher is 2 primal for a spell. Unleash. Deal 2 damage to each unit without flying, and it seems very reasonable in Expedition.
The rate is not great. Like
no,
3
but that's why it seems playable in Expedition.
Yeah, I'm pretty low on it.
Sonny, if the rate is bad, it's Expedition playable. That's how it works.
Do you like Icicles?
I think Icicles, it was worth noting. So Icicles is 3 primal for an Overwhelm, deal 4 damage spell, and it's mostly interested. I think Expedition Frenzy decks will like this card a lot because you kill a 3/3 and you deal 1 damage and trigger all your frenzies. It probably is too slow for Throne. We already have deal 3 damage Overwhelm and Throne for 1 cost less. But I think there is a nice little aggressive throw. For example, Yeti Pugilist. You play Icicles, deal 1 or 2 damage to the opponent with the Overwhelm, and you trigger Pugilist, and you're very happy with that.
Yeah. So it's worth mentioning that in Expedition, the power bases probably are not going to be nearly as good. So it might be really difficult to play the displays. And in which case, this is a reasonable removal spell. If you're comparing it against Display of Survival, I don't think it's very good. But
they're very different cards, but yes.
Yeah, but like, if influence isn't an issue, you would rather play Display of Survival, right?
In most decks. I think the Yeti Pugilist deck might not, but again, that's
oh yeah, that's true.
Like I guess you'd play them both, to be honest. If you're playing a Yeti, that could be like your only interaction would be Icicles and Display of Survival. But like, Expedition, I've heard we get the other 5 tomes in this set. So we do get those 5 tomes. I don't know what the power in Expedition looks like, though, specifically.
I thought those were the only ones, and there was also the one that deals 2 damage to yourself.
Sure. Don't we get like seats or anything? Don't get any of those?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
You'd have to check the
So
reprints.
How do you feel about Mind Broken Cobbler? It's interesting. It's got interesting. So Mind Broken Cobbler is 3 and a primal for a 4/3 Overwhelm. Summon. If you have a unit in your void, you gain an Aegis, and it's a civilian as well.
I'm pretty low on it. The 3/4 or the 4/3 Overwhelms for 3 have not traditionally been good, and it doesn't protect itself.
And to be clear, we're talking about Expedition, definitely not Throne.
Yeah.
Although in Throne, the face Aegis might be more relevant than Expedition's face Aegis. That being said, though, the more and more the Eternal comes out, the more face Aegis seems to be relevant, right? Where it's like you can stop any hand attack or anything like that. So I think if face Aegis becomes really useful in Expedition, this card could very easily see play in sort of a Yeti Pugilist aggressive primal deck.
Yeah, that's fair.
Other good cards, man. Primal has so many good cards, huh? Okay, next good Primal card, Skycrag Synthesis. 3 primal for an Inscribe fast spell. You can negate an enemy spell, create and draw a random unit with that spell's cost. Yes, it's more expensive than check raised by 2, but it has the word on it. So if it's in your main deck, worst case scenario, it's just a primal sigil, it's just a seek power, right? The thing about Inscribe is that Inscribe is kind of like seek power. You're paying 1 by playing a depleted card. If you pay seek power and play a power after that, you play the depleted power. So Inscribe is basically a seek power. And as a seek power or a negate enemy spell with card advantage, that seems really powerful. Like Nullify, but better if you have a second Primal.
Yeah, seems like it could be a good card for control decks, and not much else, but it might be a pretty good card in the decks that want it.
I mean, we currently have like 4 really powerful 3-cost Primal cards that are fast at the same time, so you can hold all of them open, and you can, like, if your opponent does nothing, you play Wisdom of the Elders. If they play a spell, you play Skycrack Synthesis, and if they play a bunch of units, you play Display.
Yeah, or if they target you, you play Display of Survival.
Yeah. Draw Go in Eternal.
Yep.
Sleight of Hand I'm going to mention very briefly. Sleight of Hand is 3 Primal for a fast spell. Draw 2 cards. Transform each power card drawn this way into a snowball. For the most part, we play Wisdom of the Elder to draw power cards, so transforming them is not exactly going to be in most decks. That being said, some decks like Tessa decks, would really like having the extra snowballs, or maybe Frenzy decks, if they want to play Sleight of Hand, they want to play Wisdom, which seems maybe unlikely. In the right deck, I could see it being played, but it seems overall worse than Wisdom of the Elders.
I agree, yeah. Worse than Wisdom of Elders. I probably wouldn't consider playing it because of Wisdom of Elders. And I think it's like a lot worse than Wisdom of Elders. I don't think it's close.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying it. No, it definitely is.
Yeah.
You'd have to have the very specific deck, like maybe a Tessa deck, as my one example of a deck that theoretically might want this over Wisdom of the Elders. Crinkle Boys, I don't think it's good enough for Constructed.
No. How about Windscreamer? This one's kind of interesting. It's another throwback card, and I love all these throwback cards.
Oh yeah.
Your units with flying have +1/+1. Give one of your Frenzy. Give one of your units flying. It's permanent, and if you give it to itself, it becomes a 2/4 flyer, and then you can continue to give other units that you have flying.
I mean, snowball stocks are going through the roof right now.
Yeah, being a 1/3 at base is pretty embarrassing. But we were talking about winds, right? What's it called?
Majestic Skies?
Majestic Skies, that's what I'm going for. Yeah,
you said the word winds, and I was like, I can't believe I actually figured out what you were thinking about when you said winds.
Wind, sky, same deal. So like this, I mean, this is another effect that gives all of your flying units.
Oh yeah, and much cheaper than Windshaper.
Yeah, Windshaper is now a 4-cost unit, but even so,
it was always 4, wasn't it?
It was 5 at some point.
Was it actually 5? I forget.
It was a really long time ago, yeah. In any case, an interesting card. How do you like Carnivorous Terror?
I mean, the interesting thing about Carnivorous Terror is that it works with cost reduction, but I think that my suspicion is that there's better Unleash combos to be played than Carnivorous Terror. Expedition is probably fine, and in Draft it's obviously insane.
Okay.
The card next to it is something I'm more interested for Unleash combos, which is Unleash draw 2 cards, because with cost reduction you can, draw into the other parts of combo if you're, trying to like combo with a Soulfire or whatever. It's, an interesting way to draw into other things. But I think that there's just better Unleash combos than Carnivorous Terror, but it obviously triggers with itself and stuff. But yeah, overall I'm not the biggest fan.
Yeah, it is permanent and it triggers with any card with Overwhelm. In any case,
that's true.
It
triggers with spells Overwhelm too if you have an Overwhelm spell.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about
Icicle.
That. Well, that might be good because if you're consistent getting a 6/6 plus.
Say it again.
If you're consistently getting a 6/6 plus, for 4, that could be pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's got a lot of cuteness to it. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's very cute. Look at that art. That art's adorable.
All right, Island. I think a lot of people have been talking about this card.
Here, you can read it.
Island is a 4-cost quad primal card. It's a 4/4 Aegis. Island Hand of the Tempest is her full title. Frenzy, +1/+1 and flying this turn, and reduce the cost of Island's ultimate by 1. Ultimate, pay 9 to play Channel the Tempest. So I think that the ultimate is not very realistic most of the time, but the fact that this is a 4/4 Aegis, it can be jumped and be attacked for 5 if you frenzy it, has quite a bit of potential, although the quad primal might keep it out of Expedition where it would really shine.
I mean, you say the quad primal keep it Expedition, but we do have Display of Survival, which already wants to play a heavy primal deck. So, like, if you're playing Display of Survival, you can very easily fit an Eileen because they just fit really well together. It's not like Primal has its fair share of any sort of effect you want. You want a board clear? You got Fissure. You want some base damage or some unit removal? You got Icicles. You want card draw? There's Sleight of the Hand, Boundless Knowledge, Negates and Synthesis. You have other generically strong units like Carnivore Terror. I could see a heavy Expedition deck in Primal seeing play, for sure.
I feel like my experience with monofaction decks in Expedition is generally underwhelming. But you could be right. Maybe this is the one format where we are going to have the monofaction Expedition decks based off the power of these displays.
Oh, it's a cycle of gifts. I didn't even recognize that until just now.
Oh yeah,
did you
No, I didn't realize.
It's a cycle of legendary relics, each of their faction, that have gift of plus something.
So Gift of Zolta is a bad relic. We're not going to talk about it, but it's part of the cycle of bad relics.
How do you feel about Jotun Grunt? It looks terrible to me, but
Jotun Runt?
Runt. Could be a grunt. Could be a grunt. I don't know.
2/2. It's playing 4 for a 2/2. I don't think it's good, even if the payoff is huge.
You asked me about paying 4 for a 1/1.
Yeah, but you get a payoff immediately. You get to teleport.
That's true.
Something.
That's true. No, that's true. You get a payoff there where you don't get otherwise. Okay, Town Bully though is interesting. Town Bully is 4 and a Primal for a 1/1. I know we're just talking about a 2/2 for 4, but when Town Bully hits the enemy player, it gets +1 attack. Frenzy. Play a 6/6 Jotun if you don't have one. So in the Expedition, but in Throne, for example, Wump into Town Bully makes it a 2/1, and you get a 6/6 immediately. If you play this for 5 in like Expedition whatever, and you get a 5 cost 1/1 and a 6/6, that's kind of beefy stats.
Seems like a lot of hoops to jump through. Just give me my Carnivorous Terror for 4, and I think I'll be happy with that.
I love the hoops, Sonny. I am all about the hoops.
All right, shall we continue?
Oh, we shall. Life-changing meal. I'm not going to discuss it here because it's terribly expensive, but it has hilarious flavor because the meal is literally life-changing because it transforms your units to other units.
Yeah.
Literally life-changing meal.
Yeah, the Yeti that's cooking it is flipping a giant egg. Very nice.
Oh, Inspire's back. Wait, is this our first Inspire card?
Yeah.
Or it's the only
think I've seen Inspire cards. Okay.
So Pelek Zoltan Elder is interesting. It's the 6 Primal for a legendary 2/6. When Pelek attacks, invoke, Inspire, units you draw get +1/+3 in Aegis. Seems a little expensive for what it does, but it does provide card advantage and value over time in a significant way.
Attacking with a 6 cost 2/6, I don't think for this card. Like, it is nice that the Invoke will always give you the option to have a unit that's going to be way better because of the Inspire, but I don't think it's good.
Okay, so wow, does Primal not have any expensive cards in the set?
Like not.
The most expensive Primal card is 6. It's crazy. Sundown Accord is worth discussing, albeit only briefly. 6 Primal for a spell. Draw a single faction spell from your void, then transform each Primal Sigil in your deck into a copy of that spell. And the reason I think it's only briefly is this card better than Reread? No.
It costs 6. Okay, the one thing about this card is if you can make this deck work, and I don't think it does, but if you play, it's not bad news, it's the other one, the Warp expensive card, Fire, gives like 8 power or 10 power if you have Tribute.
Warp, the end of the barrel?
Yeah. So if you can somehow play End of the Barrel into Sundown Accord, and then into End of the Barrel again, but man, you'd still need another 4 power on top of that.
I feel like if you're playing like a rebuild deck, Sonny, I feel like you're just gonna win when you play End of the Barrel the first time.
Yeah, I feel like rebuilds would be better. Okay, yeah, I'm thinking of some crazy situation that's probably not going to happen. Let's continue.
So Cabal Associate.
Huh?
Do you not like Cabal Associate?
Okay, maybe.
Cabal Associate is 1 in a shadow for a 1/2 rogue, frenzy, +1 attack. So it's like a Yeti Pugilist, except it grows less, but it also has permanent growth. Overall, Yeti Pugilist is probably stronger though. So and it's an upside. It doesn't have Reckless. Where's the upside on this card?
I think that Yeti Pugilist is better because it
Yep.
can attack through things. This is always going to trade with whatever is blocking it. And
again,
granted, if that thing costs more than one, that's a problem. But yeah.
And just for completeness sake, pick clean, one in the shadow, fast spell. Each card in the enemy void gets void bound. Is more or less it's basically just a market void hate card if needed. And that's about it. Through the Unknown, though, as Sunny alluded to, is probably very good. Read it out.
So through the Unknown, draw a unit from your void. If it's a shadow unit, deal 1 damage to the enemy player. Shadow spell. I've already tried playing this in like a Stone Scar Frenzy deck. If you're playing a Frenzy deck, I think this can be an okay option for it.
Triggers Frenzy if it's Shadow. If it's not Shadow, it doesn't trigger Frenzy. But in Expedition especially, we don't have Dark Return, right? So this is the 1-cost Dark Return Expedition. In Throne, we have Tesseract, though, and you can return a Grenahen with this, and you can either draw this with Grenahen, draw Grenahen off of this, and if you draw Grenahen off this, it will trigger Tessa as well. So that's very cute.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I didn't realize that you could draw this off of Grenahen because it deals damage. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and then you can get But Sonny, by playing Grenahen, drawing through the Unknown, then you play through the Unknown and draw back Grenahen. You have thus established a loop, and your opponent must concede.
1/3s and pings for 1. Very scary. Let's continue.
Should we discuss Egg Snatch and how terrible it is? Just to mention how terrible it is. Okay, but if you want to see a really terrible card, people watching this, read Egg Snatch. It is quite bad.
Okay, Forgotten Youth is kind of interesting. It's another one of these transform cards. It's a 2-cost 0/3 summon scout. Frenzy, you gain 1 health. After the 3rd time, transform it into Alicia Unafraid, which is a 1/4 unblockable that gets Frenzy +3 attack and lifesteal this turn. So I think it's only good if you can trigger Frenzy very easily. But if you can, and in Expedition, I do think it's quite good because then you'll be attacking for 4 lifesteal each turn.
Well, you can attack for more than 4 because you can trigger Frenzy multiple times, right?
That's true.
You get like 6 Frenzies in a row.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm somewhat skeptical of this card. Let's say you're triggering like 1 or 2 Frenzies a turn. If that, you're not attacking with Forgotten Youth for like 3 turns, and then it's a 1/4 or a 4/4 for the 4th turn. Like, would you rather just have like a Yeti Pugilist you've attacked for like? If so, would you rather have Yeti Pugilist which you attacked for 7, or Forgotten Youth where you've gained 3 health?
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, you can get it on 1 turn. It is possible, but that might.
I'm saying, would you rather attack with Yeti Pugilist for 7? Then?
Yeah, I'd probably attack. Okay, let's continue.
Hidden Growth though is really cool. Hidden Growth is 2 Shadow for a 3/1 unblockable relic weapon. Nothing can have an Aegis. Useful hate text on a 2-cost card, and it's a 3/1 unblockable relic weapon. Unblockable relic weapons can attack units, right? They don't have to attack face, or can they only attack face?
No, they can attack units too. So like this can remove enemy units, or it can also just trigger Frenzy, be a reliable way of triggering Frenzy.
This card seems really good. It costs 2 Shadow though, is its biggest downside for Throne and Expedition purposes, but super efficient. Stopping Aegis is incredibly relevant in a lot of matchups, and unblockable, triggers Frenzy, deals damage. Being a relic weapon also is relevant for the purposes of some ways control decks can sometimes have a hard time killing a relic weapon. So I'm a big fan. I'm in.
Yeah, someone mentions that in chat mentions that has to be non-combat damage. Has to be non-combat damage from units, but relic weapons do work.
Yeah, Frenzy specifically reads, does something when you or a non-attacking unit hits the enemy player. You are the relic weapon owner. That's why Frenzy is very weird to read, but plays pretty intuitively. It basically means whenever damage that's not through your unit's attacking goes through.
It is.
But then there's also like ignores Nightfall as well, so it's kind of weird.
All right. Nico, Urban Hunter, 2-cost 3/1, can't block. Frenzy, draw Nico from your void with +1 attack. Oh man, this with auto tread. Your auto tread becomes huge. Nico becomes huge, your opponent takes a bunch of damage. This card seems very good.
Is Auto Shred an expedition?
No.
Okay.
That's good.
That's good.
But still, like, in Throne, like, that's a big deal. So, I think this card is quite good. Obviously, downside, can't block. But even so, it's just...
I mean, even just in, like, a generic Stone Scar aggro deck, you play Nico, you keep attacking. If they ever block, presumably at some point you're going to Frenzy. Right? Nico is not the... Unlike, say, Pugilist or Forgotten Youth, Nico's a card where, like, you'll eventually Frenzy in an aggro deck, and you'll just draw back Nico and get some, decent card advantage that can help you push out a game.
Yep. Continuing on, Shrivel, good removal spell, 2 double shadow, giving you -4/-4 this turn. Don't think we need to say much else about this.
Importantly, though, it's a fast spell, so if you compare it to, say, Inferno Fist was 2 and a fire, deal 4 damage unit. This is fast, where Inferno Fist was slow, so very powerful, much better than Inferno Fist.
I think Searing Fist, but yeah.
Sure, whatever. Fists are all the same to me.
I like Toxicology. Deal 2 damage, 2 cost spell and shadow, but you may discard a card to give Toxicology Deadly first. So that's interesting, probably not for Expedition, but for decks that care about discarding cards, putting stuff in the void.
Yeah, so Toxicology is really cool because it's basically just like a combo enabler, right? Where you can remove a unit and set up your future void combos shenanigans. How do you feel about Bell Tower Shot, Sonny?
When I first read it, I was like, this is worse execute, but then I thought about it, and you know what? I kind of like it. There has been a situation where Mug has been constructed playable before, and especially
So Bell Tower Shot is 3 in a shadow for a slow spell, kill an exhausted enemy unit, or the enemy player discards a non-power card of your choice from their hand. So the upside to this thing is that you get both effects, right? So individually, each effect by itself is never been quite good enough, but together, it's probably playable in Expedition.
Yeah, the second ability, the second effect, second mode, I should say, when that is bad, usually the first mode is good, right?
Yeah. So it's good in most. It's good in a lot more matchups than each individual card by itself, right? Against an aggro deck, you want to have the first mode. Against a control deck, you want the second mode.
Yeah.
Okay, collection rounds. I don't want to discuss it too much, but like, it's really funny. And the tokens are called Minotaur Muscle, which is really funny.
All right, sure. Continuing on. Display of Will. Finally, the Shadow Display. 3 cost, triple shadow, fast spell, kill an enemy hero, or the enemy player sacrifices a relic or sight, or draw one of the top 4 cards of your deck, bottom the rest. What do you think?
It's got 4 modes on it. That's so busted. They can sacrifice a relic or a sight. That's like 2 modes in one. What do I think? It's my first time seeing Display of Will. I guess it depends on how common heroes are.
Yeah, that's really it, right? How common are heroes? Because if it's just the last mode, and yeah, I think it's reasonably likely to imagine that there are going to be a bunch of decks where the second mode doesn't matter. If it's just the last mode, it's really not good enough. Scheme, I think, is the 4 cost spell that does 3 cost spell that does exactly the same thing. Was never good. So it really depends on how often you can kill an enemy hero.
Now, mind you, fast scheme is a lot better than slow scheme because you can also hold up, annihilate or whatever. But just like the Primal spell, where it's a bunch of cards that individually never really saw that much play. Although to be fair, this would be better in a Machinations deck, right? You're gonna get triple shadow anyways. But we have Victimless Crime, which killed non-heroes, and that card was kind of unplayable because there's just so many heroes. So, but it could be that it's unplayable because there's half heroes and half not heroes, and it was just too inconsistent. So the question is, was Victimless Crime unplayable because there was too many heroes, or was it unplayable because it was just inconsistent?
Yeah.
That's the question.
That is the question.
Let's see what else we have here. Nidorann's Collects is interesting. In Frenzy and Expedition maybe, but it looks more like a draft card to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's see what we got here. We have Starving Horror, draft card. We have Grim Reminder. It looks terrible.
Ooh, how about this? In service, 4 double shadow, play a non-hero unit from your void. Now, most of the reanimator targets are heroes, I'm thinking of Vara, Azendel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only traditional reanimator that's not a hero is Scourge of Frostholm.
Well, I mean, making it cost one less. Pay attention. Pay attention to what these are doing. This doesn't require justice with like Life for a Life. I think Life for a Life was interesting, but ended up having too many restrictions. You had to play justice. You had to have a unit already in play. I mean, obviously this has restrictions also, but you can build around them. They're not based on
the reason in my opinion, the reason Life for Life stopped being a thing is that they nerfed Azendel and they basically cut out the reanimator deck before it could get legs. I think Life for Life is still probably very powerful. It's just that there wasn't a good target, there wasn't a good end board with Life for Life, because a lot of reanimator decks just happen to have like a unit in play anyways, right? Like a was a Spore Folk or a 1/1 that's a 2/1 that's a Mandrake, right? You just happen to have random units in play anyways, so it wasn't difficult to have a unit. The real difficulty with Life for Life was that you had to have justice, as you said. That was a big requirement actually, and they just gutted the reanimation targets.
I'm kind of optimistic about in service. Whatever you're trying to do, it's like you can solve the problems that you will face during the deck building. You don't have to worry about having a unit in play like Life for Life does, or even like Double Justice might be a difficulty. The Double Shadow on in service is never going to be an issue, and the way you build your deck, you're never going to have to be targeting a hero. So that makes it interesting. That said, most of the big cards, the big splashy cards I can think of, are heroes.
Yeah, that's the big issue here, is that, you know, Vara is a hero, right? Yeah, you gotta be playing the Scourge of Frostholms, and, you know, Valiant Guardian I think was not a hero, but then they like, you know, gutted Valiant Guardian, so that's no longer a target. You know, that you could use it as a way to cheat out a Sentinel. There's lots of Sentinels that are decent. You know, the 7-cost Sentinel in Fire. You can start the train that way, but that means you're playing Reanimator and Relics, and that just seems like a pain.
Yeah.
Speaking of Relics, though, Sahin Stateless looks very good to me. Sahin Stateless is 4 and a shadow for a 3/4. Lifesteal while you have a relic. Summon. The enemy must choose. Give you one of their relics, or Sahin deals 4 damage to them. And the reason I think it seems good is that if the opponent has no relics, it should deal 4 damage to them. If it doesn't, the card's just like completely terrible. But if it does deal 4 damage to them with Lifesteal, this card's kind of like a Siege Rhino, and Siege Rhino is pretty good.
What's the card we had? It's like Fear Tracker. It's a 5
Fear Tracker
with Corrupt. I feel like that card's so much better than this. It always has Lifesteal.
So the thing that's different about Fear Tracker versus Sahin is that 1 cost less is a significant cost difference, right? 4 versus 5 is pretty significant, and then 2, this deals 4 damage where Fear Tracker did 3 damage, and that's also probably going to be pretty relevant. That being said, though, conditional lifesteal and the opponent can just like give you an hour if they're playing Hour of Shavka or whatever could be enough of a downside. But I think this card has potential.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. The big wheel. Oh my god, the art's beautiful.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I don't think this card.
I mean, it's also
but
no, I think this card is worth talking about. 4 shadow for the big wheel, a relic. At the start of your turn, draw an additional card and take damage equal to its cost. If it's a power, gain 2 life. I think this card might be playable. We saw that the card draw off of Waxing Moon was pretty good, and this card's like a Waxing Moon every turn. Doesn't give you the deadliest part though, which is relevant. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I'm kind of into this.
I think Waxing Moon is way is that the name of the card? Waxing Moon? Okay, yeah. So I think that card's way better because this one is just going to kill you really quickly. I mean, like, sure, Waxing Moon deals 1 to you every turn, but I think on average you're going to take way more damage from this. Like, if you draw...
all I heard is that Sunny thinks Dark Confidant is the worst Magic card ever printed. That's all I heard right now.
Dark Confidant costs half as much as this. How about Dark Tutelage? Sorry, we're bringing in Magic comparisons, which is a 3-cost enchantment that does the same thing that Dark Confidant does. That costs 3, and it was never good.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that card, I guess, though. I guess that's your point.
Yeah.
The games are different though, but I just wanted to poke Sunny for a second. But you're probably right, but like this card I think has potential. I didn't think Waxing was ever going to be that good when it was first rolled, and I was so wrong about Waxing Moon. Like, I was incredibly wrong about Waxing Moon. That card was bonkers good.
Yeah, Deadly is also
I'm
a
not
big
going to be
deal
wrong
on
about
that.
Big Wheel.
All right, we can place bets on it, I suppose.
Oh my goodness. Okay, do you want to talk about Black Carnosaur, or should we even past it?
I don't think this is good.
Okay, good, because I want to talk about Friendly Visit. I'd never seen this card before, and I'm like into this card. And Sunny's knowing why he's smiling right now. I can tell. I can hear it. Friendly Visit is 5 and a shadow for a slow spell. Kill each unit with power 2 or less, or steal and draw the top 2 cards of the enemy player's deck. This is a 5-cost spell with unique abilities. Volatility!
Man, units that there aren't that many units that have 2 attack or less. I'm sorry, it does not kill very many.
I know. I wish it was 3. If it was 3 attack, Sonny. If it was only 3 attack, it would be. I mean, it'd probably be way too good at 3 attack. But like, but like, even still at 2 attack, I still want to believe, Sonny. It's a card that can affect the aggro matchup and the control matchup, and has unique things that it can do. Like, so many expensive spells are just kill a unit or kill 2 units, and this is like not just kill a unit. like so many expensive spells are literally just like kill a unit badly, kill a relic badly, draw a card badly, and this is like not that, which makes it very appealing compared to every other terrible expensive spell in the game.
Yeah, that is true. To be fair, that is true. I've looked through the volatility spells, and sometimes it is very embarrassing. But this isn't it.
I'm gonna try it. I don't necessarily believe, but like I want to believe. I believe that I can believe. Okay. Anyways, whoa. Okay, Gift of the Auric Bank looks kind of crazy.
Yeah, this one actually looks really good. So, it's a 5-cost relic, double shadow. Your minotaurs and weapons have +2/+1. Summon, play 2 1/1 minotaurs with taunt. So, those aren't just 1/1 minotaurs. Those are 3/2 minotaurs. 5 cost for 2 3/2s is not super embarrassing. On top of giving your other units a big buff, and if they have any weapons, even more of a buff. And if they kill this, you still have the units in play. If they kill the units in play, you still have the relic. This card seems very good to me.
Yeah, also it stacks really well if you play a second Gift of the Auric Bank, or like it also works with like the unblockable relic weapon. You have a 5/2 unblockable relic weapon now. I mean, like, wow, that card seems really good. Minotaur Tribal has suddenly become really good.
Yeah. So this, I mean, you're really limited by what Minotaurs there are, but you don't need great Minotaurs for this card to be exceptional.
No. I would agree. You don't need great Minotaurs. I mean, by itself, it's definitely gonna be expedition playable. That's for sure. And all you need is really like 1 or 2 other Minotaurs in a deck to make this thing, go from being a solid expedition play to like a very good one.
Yeah. All right. Multifaction cards.
The rest of the shadow cards seem less than playable. Also, no expensive shadow cards either. The most expensive one is also 6. Interestingly enough.
Well, I mean, we do have Unleash, right? So that kind of functions like.
That's true. No, that's true. I mean, we had Lights Out, which is a 4-cost Death Strike with Unleash. So that's like an 8-cost card. That's a good point, Sonny. You raise a good point.
Yeah, you're just looking for volatility targets, though.
That's true. I'm not. I definitely was. So how do you feel about Rock? So let's Rock Fort. Then we're gonna move on from Shadow to multi-faction cards. Rock Fort is 3 fire time for a relic. At the start of your turn, play an Etched Totemite. Pay 5 to give a unit +1 attack, charge, and taunt this turn. An Etched Totemite is a token that says at the start of your turn, sacrifice it to get +1 power this turn.
I think this is just way too slow.
It's like a what's that relic that gives you +1 maximum power? The 2-cost one?
Power Stone?
Power Stone. It's like a Power Stone, but you play it on turn 3, not turn 2, and then you don't get power on turn 4, and then you finally get power on turn 5, and only if the opponent didn't kill your unit, or you had to block with it.
Yeah.
Okay, you talked me out of it. I hate it. Arcanum's True Heart is much more interesting. 4 fire time for a 1/1 sentinel. With reckless, so all side. Arcanum's True Heart can't die if it has any attack whatsoever, and when it attacks, it gets +1/+1, then increases ability by +1/+1.
I don't think it's just way too slow. So it attacks as a 2/2, then a 4/4, then a 7/7, then like 11 or whatever. And I don't know how many turns that was. It's like 4 or 5 turns before it starts actually doing something, and then at that point you can just chump block it.
I mean, you can give it endurance, or you can play harsh rules and stuff, just like the other harsh rule cards.
That's true.
Because it can't die, so you can play harsh rules around it, or you can give it killer and get value that way, or endurance and just have an endurance name that can never die.
I suppose if you give it endurance, that's something I'm kind of interested in. We've seen Vargo Redclaw not be very good. Yep. Like the Vargo harsh rule deck.
Yeah,
ended up not.
But the difference between this and Vargo is that Vargo couldn't die, but you could Inferno Fist it or any number of things. Where Arcanum's True Heart, you can't kill it with a torch. Where you could double torch Vargo.
Yeah, I mean that's true, but it takes long to get going. So on the first turn, it attacks for 2, and then on the second turn, it attacks for 4, and on the third turn, it attacks for 7. You probably don't care about any of those 3 attacks. After that, you start caring, but it's such a delayed return on investment. If you can give it endurance and it can block too, then maybe you're talking. But I don't think it does anything unless you can do that. Riot Detail, Minotaur, 2 cost Rakano Minotaur.
Fair enough.
Continuing on. Riot Detail, 2 cost, 2/2, charge, summon, give Riot Detail +2/+2 or taunt this turn. Seems solid to me. Most of the time I think it's just going to be a 4/4 that keeps on attacking as a 2/2. That can occasionally eat an Initiative of Sands or something. I don't know if it makes it into Rakano decks in Throne, but probably a nice expedition card.
In some sense, a 4/4 with charge on turn 2 almost can have taunt. I mean, it's not going to, but a 4/4 with charge for 2, sometimes we'll just have taunt anyways, right? Because it's if you're low on life, you might have to block it. Not on turn 2, but on turn 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
Taunt is very relevant. It's kind of like Crackling Hustler, except playable on turn 2, where Crackling Hustler wasn't playable on turn 1. So I think the card's fine.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
All right, here's the big the big question, because there were very differing opinions when this card was spoiled. Give Chase, 5 double fire, double justice spell. Play 2 units from the top 5 cards of your deck with cost 3 or less. They get +2/+2 and charge this turn. At the end of your turn, put them into your hand. What do you think?
I am a no.
You actually don't think this card's good?
For reference, if you have 40 hits for this in your deck, you will get 1 unit off of it. You'll get at least 1 unit off it 98% of the time, and you'll get 2 hits off of it 85% of the time. Is a 15% chance to whiff on the 2 units. So let's put it this way: if you have 40 hits in your deck, 15% of the time you'll hit 1 card. Is the card good then? If you hit 1 card off of it, is it good?
I mean, if it's a Valkyrie Enforcer, it's pretty good.
I mean, but let's say it's also a 1-drop, right? Because you have to play a mixed card. You're not playing 43 drops. You're playing some number 3, some number 2s, and presumably some number 1s. If it's 1 2-drop, if it's a Rakano Outlaw or whatever,
yeah,
or
that's true.
Or a Ikaria. That's you attack for 6 once and then it goes back to your hand as a 4/3.
Yeah, I mean then it's not great. But what if you hit 2 units? Even if the units aren't very good.
Well, my point is that is the fail case of 15% of the time. Remember, this is if you have 40 hits, which means you can't have, this before your other cards. You only have 6 other non-unit, non-spells in your deck that aren't 3 or less. So you can't play a 4-cost unit. It has to be 3 or less. So you can't play more than 6 other spells, relic weapons, interaction pieces that aren't give chase. And then, even then, you have a 15% chance to only hit 1 target. Is it good still?
I think the answer is yes.
It could be. The
answer is yes. Because if you're not playing the spells, then you're probably playing units that have spell-like effects. And that's the type of thing that this really wants to hit. If you hit a summon effect, you're going to get it twice. or you have the potential to get it twice. If you hit something like
I mean,
lifesteal, that's a gigantic swing.
I mean, if you hit and
Stormblessed, you there?
And Valkyrie Force, or you just win the game. Hello, testing. Sorry, I mentioned it's not the greatest right now.
Can you hear me? You cut out for a second there. If you want to repeat what you said.
I said if you hit Jack and Valkyrie Force, you do just win the game on the spot.
Yeah, I don't know about Jack because that essentially makes this a 6 cost card. But
I think you do it because it's a card that costs 3 or less. It's a unit that costs 4 that also costs 3. So it lets you have a curve in your deck while playing Give Chase. So you definitely play Jack.
You probably do play Jack. That's true. Although if you hit it, I think there's going to be a fair amount of time that you're just not going to be able to pay the 1.
I think that's fine because if you pay 5 and get Jack and Valkyrie Enforcer and can't pay the 1, it's still better because you get to play your 4 cost card and your curve, and you get to have your spell unit. You basically get to have your cake and eat it too, right? You get your 4 cost card that can also be played off Give Chase.
Yeah. Anyway, I think this card's good. Ilya said it was really bad, so I figured that you'd think it was good because your heuristic is that if Ilya says a card is bad, then it's probably actually really good.
So the heuristic is that the heuristic with a capital H is a joke. It's kind of a meme where if Ilya says a card is bad, but a notable community member says a card is good, then the card is broken. And the answer is that, enough people are saying the card is good. Ilya says the card is bad, which means it probably is broken then. And we'll see. We'll see. I still lean towards no, but I would be happy to prove the heuristic proven correct once again.
Yeah, when that discussion came out, I was like, okay, I'm crafting premiums of this card. That's how sold I am on it.
Okay, so Sunny, I went to the next page and my eyes went wide. We have Skycrag Tome is also fun, but also Uncrossable Ravine. Do you know what this is, Sunny? Do you see this? Do you see the Uncrossable Ravine?
Yeah, okay, so it's a volatility target, but if you're playing volatility, you're not playing spell damage matters.
Look. Okay, let me just read the card. Uncrossable Ravine is 5 fire primal for a spell. Deal 1 damage to each unit, site, and player. Play a random 1-cost unit and give it +1/+1 for each damage dealt this way. At like a baseline, with nothing else in play, it's deals 1 to each player and then puts a 1/1 with +2/+2 on it, which is not very good. But there's even like 2 units in play. 2 units in play. It produces a 1/1 with +4/+4, and that's like kind of be like sort of average in my opinion. I think this card could be really, really cool. And if you have, as Sunny alluded to, spell damage makes this card go off. Like you give everything 2 damage and you put like a 1-cost unit with like +8/+8 on it. Whew, that's a lot. I think this card looks really fun, but it probably won't get there. It probably won't get there, but I want it to get there.
I agree, it does look fun, but I think it's really bad.
It's not really bad. I will stand by that. I don't think it's really bad. I just don't think it will be like tier 1. But I think it'll be fine.
The card next to it looks pretty good. Clash of Wills. Each player draws 3 cards, then deal 1 damage to the enemy player for each card in their hand. If you have spell damage... Oh, yeah, it's the enemy player? That seems pretty cool.
The thing is, Sunny, is that I don't think spell damage works the way that you want it to. If you read Maul says deal 2 damage to any player for each card in their hand. It just does it in 1 lump sum. I think this deals N+1 damage, unfortunately.
Shucks. Not 2 N.
Now, mind you, they might have coded it differently because, coding can be weird and digital games can be weird. So it could be that it would work with low spell damage. But if Maul is my precedent, then I will say that it's not going to be as good spell damage as we might want.
All right, fair enough.
So how do you feel about the new 2-drop in Stone Scar?
It's interesting. If you have like an Argenport Instigator, the Frenzy can really add up, and it having Overwhelm is pretty relevant for that. Or like.
So for reference, we're talking about Stone Scar Adept. We're talking about Stone Scar Adept is 2 Fire Shadow for a 2/2 rogue. Overwhelm, Warcry, Frenzy +1/+1.
Yeah. So like if you have an auto tread going with that other card that returns from your void, you can pump
Oh my
this
god.
for a lot. Yeah. Or an Argenport Instigator, if there are just a bunch of units that trade, this will get pretty big. The fact that it starts out as 2/2 is kind of sketchy, but I think it's good enough. I think that like it can get out of hand often enough to be a big deal.
Card looks really good, actually. I think the card looks quite solid. I think on base rate, it's not insane, but like, it's not the worst thing ever. And if you get one frenzy, right? Just one frenzy is a 3/3 with Overwhelming Warcry for 2. And I think that's, pretty good at that point. So
Yeah.
I think the card's probably playable in a lot of decks, even in
Yeah.
Throne.
Yeah, I mean the Frenzy deck I was playing with was in Throne before we started this, and it seemed pretty good. I don't know, I didn't get enough games in with it to really know.
Okay, I know this next card is a 5-cost spell, but I don't need to discuss it.
Good.
I will say Brickblade and Juggernaut, I don't know why it costs 8.
I don't know either.
Why
It's
does it
like
cost 8? Couldn't it cost like 6 and be fine? Like if it cost 6, it'd be like, oh, it's cute in Expedition maybe, but like at 8, that's like I mean, so for reference, Brickblade and Juggernaut is 8 fire, fire, shadow, shadow for a 10/10 reckless taunt, and it doesn't heal end of turn. Couldn't it just be an 8-cost 10/10 reckless taunt and not be a problem without the other text?
sorry,
Sunny?
I was doing something. Yeah, I it doesn't seem good.
Like if it costs 6, I'd be like, oh, it's overcosted for 6 and it doesn't heal. That's kind of cool. But like at 8, you could just like an 8-cost 10/10 reckless taunt seems like it could just be a card to me that doesn't
Yeah.
need to have this incredible downside.
Without,
Wow.
yeah, no overwhelm, so it doesn't just kill them. Yeah, I agree. This card is weird and
Okay,
not good.
Combray Adept is really cool. Unlike the other card, it's really not cool. I guess it's okay. The other card's coolish. Combray Adept is really cool though. 3 times justice for a 2/1 summon. Draw a time sigil or a just sigil from your deck, +1 maximum power. So it's Amber Acolyte that also is Apprentice Mage, which is a really cool combination. Seems perfectly good and seems like it can help support and be, a solid role player in a number of decks.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's
Yeah.
going to make it in Throne, but definitely the power level for like some sort of combat ramp deck and Expedition seems quite good.
I should see it in Throne even. It's kind of like Enter the Monastery, where if they have to throw a card at it, you get value, and otherwise you get like I don't think it's gonna. I don't think it's never gonna shake any waves, right? But like I think it could see play in Throne even, not as like the greatest card of all time, but like definitely Expedition for sure.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, since Enter the Monastery doesn't exist anymore, I mean it costs 4. Yeah, maybe it
It does.
is just barely good enough because
3.
it's
My
worse than
goodness.
Enter the Monastery, but it's not too different from it.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. Not much more to be said. I don't like the other Combray cards unless you care about them.
Nope. Let's continue on.
Okay. Let's see. Elysian Adept is too expensive. Lake Terror is probably worth discussing.
Yeah, Lake
Um,
Terror, 3 cost, double time, doubles Primal, 7/6. At the start of each turn, exhaust Lake Terror, Frenzy, ready Lake Terror. I think that if you can pair this with an Infinite Hourglass or somehow give this Endurance, then you've got 7/6 Endurance, and it's great. Or if you can trigger Frenzy reliably before you attack, but I think that's the harder way of doing this.
the other funny thing about this is that if you trigger Frenzy on the opponent's turn, you can block with it still, which is kind of cute. You'd be like, aha, I got you. But it also plays really well with the Self-Silence deck. Huh? Huh?
Continuing on.
I
Diamond of the Valley. Ooh, I like this card. Diamond of the Valley.
think it looks.
It's a 4 cost Elysian Relic. At the start of each player's turn, they draw an additional card. Players may play an additional power card on their turns, and Entomb gains 7 health. The reason why I like this is because I am constantly looking for cards that can allow you to play additional power cards. Right now, I'm on Tyler Sanctum, and that's it. And this seems better because the problem with those types of cards is you empty your hand and then you're done. But if your deck is well suited to playing lots of power and using lots of power, then both players drawing an additional card and players playing an additional power on each of their cards is should benefit you more than your opponent. It's like one of those mirrored cards where you're just set up to deal with it better, to take
Can
advantage of it.
So I'm looking at the cards in the premium versions, and the premium art is actually like really pretty. The only thing that really is moving is the light beam and also like the pollen off of the flowers. That's a really nice little effect. That's a really understated premium, and I'm all for it. Art's really pretty, and the premium is even more pretty. So, yeah, the one thing I'll say about Diamond of the Valley, aside from its art being gorgeous, is that a lot of people are saying like, "Oh, it's a Deeper Ruin card," and I'm like, "No, bad. You already have Beacon of the Reach. You don't need a 4-cost version of that in the Deeper Ruin deck. Additionally, the one thing Deeper Ruin players don't want to give their opponent is more power to empty their hand faster so they can die faster. You definitely be somewhere where Sunny is, and you want to take advantage of the effect yourself more than you want to give the opponent the effect. So if you're thinking of it for Deco's Ruin, no. If you're thinking of it for Sunny's purposes, maybe.
Yeah. I'm also interested in Eclipse, the next card. I've already had a lot of fun with this card. Also a cool premium. So Eclipse is a 3-cost Xenon card. It's a spell that has Unleash, gain 3 health and Scout. If you've gained 9 health or more this turn, play a Lux Penumbra. So I've had a lot of fun playing Life Force already today. I think I played like 5 games. Each one is a blast. I had Mask of Torment in play. That's the one that Life Force gains power, right? Plays the Tormentor or something at 20 power. So I just gained a lot of health, and then late in the game I would play Eclipse many times, and once you reach the 9 health threshold, you get a Lux Penumbra for each time, and you just get a bunch of 9/9s. So I've really enjoyed this. You don't have to have 9 power in order to take advantage of this. If you have like a Lunar Magus to gain you 4 health, and then you have like a Devour to gain you 2 health, then you play Eclipse, then you get the 9/9. So there are ways of gaining health without spending any power. Then maybe you can Eclipse and get multiple 9/9s out of it. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really love Eclipse. I mean, I think the design is awesome, phenomenal. The card being you play afterwards is also really interesting. It's the first pay life card we've had in Eternal. Lux Penumbra. The payoff for this is if you gain 9 life, you play a Lux Penumbra, and it's a 9/9 with pay 5 life to give your other Radiance and all units in your hand, deck, and void +1/+1, which is a really cool, powerful effect. The other thing I like about this card is the Unleash combo piece that plays very differently than Soulfire, right? With Soulfire, your goal is put it to dust and then power and win the game. With Eclipse, reducing its cost doesn't really feel like the way to go compared to doing Life Force or other game life shenanigans. Yes, maybe in the end it'll be the best thing you can do with Eclipse, but I think that if you're going for the cost reduction strategy, you probably would want to go for Soulfire over Eclipse. So I think that Eclipse produces a different style of Unleashed gameplay, and I think that's really nice to see.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I would recommend trying it out. I can post the list in Discord that I was working with if you want to start from there. So cool card.
So
is it good? I don't know. All those 9/9s just died to a harsh rule.
I'll say it's just as fun as Uncrossable Ravine. I'll put it that way.
I think it's a little more viable. Anyway, continue.
Do you think it's more viable than Uncrossable Ravine? Oh, I think that's crazy. I think that they're roughly the same viability.
Oh, I think this is way. I think Life Force is way more viable than spell damage.
Anyways, so speaking of unplayable archetypes that are fun, Xenon Adept is a 7-cost 0/5. That's all you need to know, and you can play it with Spire Shadows to make a 0-cost 7/5. That's it. Okay, so now we're getting down to the Huru cards, which are all very interesting. So I want to discuss Growth Spurt for a second. Growth Spurt is 2 Justice Primal for an Unleash spell. Give one of your units a random battle skill, and it looks really bad because it's not very good. But there is a combo you can do with Growth Spurt. Do you know a card called Bren High Magister or whatever?
Yes.
The 7-cost 5/5 that when you play a card, it gives you power. If you reduce Growth Spurt to 1 cost with Trail Stories or whatever, you can play Bren, then you can play Growth Spurt on Bren all the times to give it all the battle skills, and then you can attack for 20 charge. You can attack with a 5 power, charge, unblockable, endurance, double damage, berserk, lifesteal, deal 20 damage with Bren.
Yeah, I'm not very impressed.
With lifesteal.
There's so many ways you can win with Bren. Like once you get Bren out,
what?
there are a lot of ways you can win.
What's the way you win with Bren that's not this? What's the better way?
I've built so many Bren combo decks I don't even know. When you play a power, if you play a power card, you get a power. So if you can play additional powers, each spell that you play, like if you play a power burst, you get +2 power. I don't remember the Bren combo decks that I've built before, but I've built a number of them, and they've gone crazy.
This is I guess it's kind of like a 3-card combo because you have to have the cost reduction. But there's a reason this card doesn't cost 1. If it cost 1, it would be a 2-card combo to deal 20 damage and gain 20 life on the spot, which is probably why it costs 2, because it'd be like absurd at 1 cost. Any Unleashed card that costs 1 would be absurd because Bren exists.
Yeah, but the cards that you are already playing with Bren are still good when you have Bren out. Like if you
say it again,
the cards that you were playing to get to Bren are still good when you have Bren out. This doesn't do anything for the setup.
Oh yeah, no, that's the downside of the combo, right? Where it's like you have to put this in the market, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's I think there's a potential here because I think that dealing 20 charge damage with lifesteal is pretty decent, especially when it says Aegis. But that being said, though, there's probably better combos to be had in this set. There's a bunch of combos in the set. That being said, though, I think this could theoretically be one of them. That's decent enough. Okay, Huru Adept is 3 Justice Primal for a 2/2 Aegis. When Huru Adept attacks, it gets +1/+1 this turn for each of its battle skills. So it's a 3/3 attacker that can be bigger depending on how many battle skills. Do you think it's good enough for Expedition or even Throne? Or Throne, or even Expedition?
Definitely not Throne. Expedition, I don't think so, but it could surprise me. Like having Aegis is nice, especially if it has the potential to attack for a lot.
Yeah, I think Expedition, it's possible. I would be very shocked if it saw play in Throne. Not as shocked as I'd see if Bricklade and Juggernaut saw play in Throne, because I'd be like phenomenally shocked if that was like a tier 0 card, but like Huru Adept I'd still be surprised by. Okay, next Huru card is another combo finisher. We have Conclave Siege is 6 Justice, Primal for a fast spell. When one of your units hits the enemy player this turn, play a 3/3 Gemblade on it and draw a card. So there's like 3 combos you can do with this card actually. There's a number of them, but so Line Axe is the first one, where if you have Line Axe in play, you play Conclave Siege. Line Axe connects with the enemy player. You go infinite by playing a Gemblade on Line Axe, which can hit the enemy player for 5, which draws you a card, etc., etc. You can also play the 1/2 Tribute in Fire for 2. That if you play a weapon on that card, you deal 1 damage. So same thing where you hit the enemy player for 1, draw a card. You also have this Executioner. If you have Executioner in play with a Reweave, then on their turn you play Conclave Siege. You will play a card on the enemy turn, which puts a Gemblade on Executioner, so you draw a card. And by playing a Gemblade on their turn, you deal 1 damage to the enemy player, so you draw another card, and you deal 1 damage basically for every card in your deck, with Executioner and Conclave Siege. So that's another 2-card combo.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Sunny?
Yeah.
What I said makes sense. I know.
Yeah, basically all of these combos involve playing a weapon on a unit, and then like each time you play a card, you ping your opponent for some amount, and that goes infinite. I don't think any of them are very good because none of them, all of them require at least 3 factions, and then all of them require triple.
Not Executioner, because you can play Reweave.
Reweave, but don't you have to play Conclave Siege? Oh, you reweave into it, and then you. Well, I guess all of them can.
You reweave into Executioner, which also protects the Executioner, so that way when your opponent starts, they can't interact with it.
Okay, that makes me a little more excited about it. If you can play a 2-faction deck that uses Conclave Siege, but even so, it seems really difficult to get this off. You have to cast this, then you have to hit them a lot of the time. I guess Executioner is the best way.
Now Executioner, you don't have to hit them. Executioner just works.
Still seems really tough.
I think one of these combos you're underrating, Sunny. I think one of them will surprise you. But at the same time, I'm also like, well, Monofire is going to win the Throne tournament.
Yeah.
Regardless,
I'm a little more worried than I used to be, but I'm still not that worried.
that's basically Conclave Siege. I don't think you're ever going to play it for its base effect, where you're like, I'm going to attack with 3 units and then play a Conclave Siege. Although that doesn't sound terrible either when I put it that way.
No, I think it's pretty bad.
But yeah, I mean, the nice thing about its effect, though, at the very least, is that being fast, aside from working with Executioner, is that you don't have to play it unless you know your opponent they're not interacting with your units, and you can actually get the good effects off of it, right? So if like don't block or whatever, they don't kill your units. That being said, though, yeah, it's not great unless you're comboing. Okay, let's move on to Argenport cards. Poachers and Menagerie looks like it's complete garbage. Would you agree?
I mean, it's pretty powerful if your opponent has absolutely no relic removal.
And you have like 4 turns to spare.
Yeah, but I mean, we've seen, there was that 6-cost card, or was it 6 or 7?
But Sunny, that was not a random unit. That was a unit from your deck that you could choose to get Valkyrie Enforcer off of it. You can't choose to get Valkyrie Enforcer off Poacher's Menagerie.
I know. You can this costs 4. It's way cheaper. I mean, think that
I think it looks like garbage.
I think if there's no relic removal, especially in Argenport, a faction pair that's pretty good at staying alive and drawing out games. If there's no relic removal, I think this could be pretty good.
I think that you're crazy, but that's okay. But there probably is relic removal, so,
Even so, I like this card. I think for Expedition, definitely...
It's certainly not throne play, but we can agree there.
Okay, Blackfoot Pit Boss. Is this word? Yeah, sure.
Black Book Pit Boss is 5 Justice Shadow for a 1/7. Endurance Taunt Warcry 2, which, for the record, Warcry 2 is significantly better than Warcry 1. When Black Book kills a unit, draw a card. Summon. The enemy player discards a spell or attachment of your choice from their hand. So in Expedition, it for sure looks quite solid. In Throne, it's also a Minotaur, Sunny. Remember, we just saw Minotaur Tribal being a thing.
Yeah, it also costs the same amount as that, so that's a downside. If it costs 4, it's way more exciting.
No, it's true. Or if it costs 6, but had a more powerful effect potentially. But yes, no. But even still, I don't think that that's necessarily too much of a knock. Being a Minotaur is surprisingly relevant now, and I could see because this card's also like a value play. The Shadow Gift is also a value play, right? They're both value plays. They kind of fit together, maybe.
Yeah. The fact that this only hits spells and attachment is a pretty big downside. I think if you could reliably take a card from your hand, this is going to be pretty good. But if you can't, maybe
I agree. You really want to hit that card from their hand.
Yeah. I'm optimistic about this one.
I'm also optimistic. I think
especially Expedition.
Pretty good. Yeah, definitely there. Okay, Direwood Hymn. We're almost at the end. Direwood Hymn is 2 Primal Shadow for a spell. Draw 1 of the top 3 cards from your deck, bottom the rest, which is Call the Deck. So this card is Call the Deck for Primal. But if you have no cards in hand, draw any card from your deck instead. This card is making waves. I'm kind of leaning towards it just being Call the Deck.
I was playing Call the Deck in Overloader. So this is a big upgrade to that.
I mean, Overloader, though... Well, the thing about Overloader even is it's not that big of an Overloader. Well, I mean, it kind of is. But at the same time, though, you really want to have cards in hand in Overloader, right? Your goal in Overloader is not to run out your hand. You want to have, 3 cards in hand at all times so you can actually win the game and combo off. So, are you ever going to actually get the tutor in Overloader except in, super, super niche scenarios and, the exceptionally 1 out of 1,000 game scenario?
I mean, if you use Machinations and you hit this and either hardiness or your kill spell, I think it just makes it more consistent. It can work as either one. Either you hardiness immediately and then search for your kill spell and kill them, or you play this, search for the hardiness, and then play the kill spell.
So you're saying if it's the last card in your hand. Like if hardiness plus dire with him are the two last cards in your hand, it works that way.
Yeah,
I didn't think about that part.
yeah,
No,
like
that's
if
interesting. I didn't think about.
Machinations is the last card in your hand, which happens a fair amount.
Yeah, no. I didn't think about that aspect of it, where if Machination's the last card in your hand, and you can only go dig so deep. No, that's interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
No, that would work.
One.
No, that is better. No, you're right.
So one thing about these factions for Felon combo decks, you usually aren't Hellbent, which is when you have no cards in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
So like that's a bit of a question. Like emptying your hand might be difficult, but like I don't know. It's really exciting. Getting to draw any card from your deck, that's really exciting.
You want to play Celestial Omen though, Sonny?
Oh my god, that costs 6. I've played a lot of Celestial Omens.
I think that this card is not quite as good as people are hyping up, but at the same time, though, it is quite exciting and has more potential than Color Deck by like a significant margin for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Should we even mention Can't Remember, or is it like worth skipping?
I haven't read this yet.
Oh, okay.
Wait, this is terrible.
Yeah, that's why I said should we just skip it?
Wait, isn't this just where... I guess you hit cards in their hand. Okay, so like if someone's playing some sort of combo deck, Can't Remember, can hose them. No,
you want to read it for the?
No,
you're gonna probably... Okay. Do you want to read Felon Adept though?
Yeah, Felon Adept's interesting. So it's a 3-cost Elf Bat. In Feln, it's a 0/4 flying, Frenzy +2 attack this turn. When this hits the enemy player, draw one of the top 3 cards from your deck, put the rest on the bottom. I think this needs a permanent buff to really be exciting, so that you don't have to worry about the Frenzy, that, or if you're really good at activating Frenzy. But, even if it's a 1/4 or 2/4 flying that gets to look at the top 3 cards and draw one of them each turn, that seems pretty good. But then I also compared it to Acquisitive Crow, and I was like, Acquisitive Crow is really good. It draws a card every turn, into the first turn that it attacks. And that hasn't seen play in a long time, but it also just survives a lot better than Crow. So it looks interesting. I think that enabling it is going to be a little too difficult, so I don't think it's going to make the cut, but, it's interesting to mess around with.
So, first of all, Spire Shadows. Hello. 0 cost 3/4 that draws you cards.
Yeah. Wow, that's huge. I didn't think about that.
So the obligatory Spire Shadows mentioned any also Black Book Pit Boss Spire Shadows 1 cost 5/7 that makes you rip a card out of the opponent's hand. Also obligatory Spire Shadows mentioned. But so Felon Adept. Here's my hot take, Sonny. Felon Adept. Provided that there's not a degenerate combo deck that just like Soulfire combo that you have to contend with, I think Felon Adept might be the best card in the set.
Wow, that's my hot take.
Felon Adept reads to me, it reads so powerful to me. Like, you're talking about Inquisitive Crow as if it's somehow, like, the effect of drawing cards is somehow comparable to Felon Adept. Do you know how much better one of the top 3 cards in your deck is rather than a random 1-cost card from the entire history of Eternal Spells? You know how much better the cards in your deck are than random spells from Eternal's history? When you need to choose one of 3 every turn, if you can play like a Sunset Stone and make this a 1/5 endurance or any permanent buff to make Felon Adept attack every turn, even like frenzying it seems insane, because the thing is you frenzy it and you're probably going to hit another frenzy target or another permanent buff of some kind. Like, this card reads to me as absolutely bonkers. Like, drawing one of the top 3 every turn. It's a 0/4 multi-faction unit that's also flying. Like, that's super hard to deal with. The Shackles card, Injustice. That can't. No, sorry, I'm thinking Avagraph. Avagraph can't kill it. Shackles could kill it because Shackles is not Avagraph. Because it's way better than Avagraph. But like, this card, reads absurdly to me. Drawing one of the top 3 every turn to call the deck every turn seems insane to me. So I think this card is so good. That's my hottest take from the set.
Yeah, that's a pretty good hot take.
Provided, of course, again, that there's no super degenerate combo deck that this card, is somehow too slow to interact with or something. That being said, though, drawing the top 3 cards also can enable a combo deck pretty well, too, by, digging into your combo pieces at the low cost of, like, condemning the opponent's face or something.
You definitely make some good points about, like, how one of the top 3 cards of your deck is infinitely better than random 1-cost spell. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my hottest take. Anyways,
I do think it's going to be too hard to enable to do consistently.
We'll see. I my take out there. So next card is somehow manages to be interesting enough to discuss, even though when it was spoiled it cost 9. Now it costs 7, which makes it cute enough to talk about for cute purposes. So this is the Skycrag 6. It is 7 fire time primal, not 9. Draw 6 random heroes with different names from your deck. If you didn't have 10 or more total heroes with different names in your deck, discard 3 cards at random. So it's more or less just a really fun, like, if you're playing a Jang Lee Highlander deck, this card's kind of like a fun card to have in it. It's probably not constructed playable, like tier 1 playable, but it looks very fun now that it costs 7.
It looks really bad. It's a super cool card, absolutely, but I think this is really bad.
I didn't say it was. I don't think Highlander decks are good, but like the Portal decks, like it could be just a fun inclusion of Highlander. Again, not competitive in any way, but fun enough to be viable in some sort of meme Highlander deck.
Significantly as like a worse than discard your hand, draw 7.
Oh, you mean the fire version?
Yeah, the
4 fire. Yeah, the 4 fire version makes this card look like a chump. When you put it that way, Sonny, I feel like an idiot. Okay, speaking of, so going from a card that's not good to a card that's exceptionally good, we have Zoltan Conclave is a power card. You may take 2 damage to gain an influence of your choice. So it's just really good. Yeah.
My hot take is this is not as good as people think it is. I think it's still good. Yeah, it's probably good enough in Expedition also, but
Expedition is definitely good enough because we don't have power in Expedition.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, taking 2 damage, that adds up, especially if you have to do it multiple times. You don't really have the option with this card.
That is true. No, you have the option because you can
play it.
It's May.
Oh, okay. That makes it significantly better than I thought. I thought you couldn't get the power unless
if it was just
take 2.
If it was just you take 2 damage to get an influence, I would be like off this card in a heartbeat. But it's May, which means that if you don't need to, you don't have to.
Okay. So this is probably going to be good in Expedition, and it's nice that it enables, 3-faction, multi-faction decks. I think in Throne it's not going to be that good. It'll see some play in some decks, but there are a lot of decks that really care about influence thresholds and hitting them on time. And this being a power that only gives you 1 pip of influence, I think is a big drawback in Throne. In Throne specifically. In Expedition it's probably going to be an auto include in most decks.
So there's 2 things that I think that's true, that there are a lot of decks where, like Kira decks, for example, wouldn't want this because while you want to fix for whatever your second faction is, you really want to always get that justice influence, right? So any deck that always wants to get at least the 1 influence that there's main influence, but also wants to fix, wouldn't want this, right? But there's our decks that don't care. Like any deck with Diplo Steel is going to play Zoltan Conclave for sure, right? This is just a better Diplo Steel in a lot of situations. Not every situation, obviously, but it's very comparable. It stacks up really well, and for cute purposes, because I like my cuteness, is it works well in the factionless decks like Primal. It's a factionless power that, when in your void, counts as a factionless card for Cast Iron Furnace, but when played, gives you your influence. So that's kind of funny, where it's like I'm playing one type of influence, and I'm playing Zoltan Conclave to get it. But I think this card it's not a slam dunk in every deck, but I think it also, even in Throne, can enable certain 3-faction decks. Not the ones that, again, require 1 influence always, but some decks I think could want this quite a bit.
Yeah. I do think it helps a lot in enabling some ambitious power bases that were difficult previously. Like if you only need 4 influence total, and
I was gonna say sorry.
Just a batteries deck, right? It's probably
yeah.
I
mean, do you remember even Vox? Like 5-faction Vox would have probably played Zoltan Conclave, right?
Yeah,
like
that deck would love this.
Yeah.
So
it's a Diplo. This is a Diplo seal for the very ambitious 4 and 5-faction decks.
Yeah, I mean, I think those decks have to be bordering on unfair. I think a lot of the fair decks still want the 2 drops that have very heavy influence requirements, or 3 drops that have very heavy influence requirements, where you probably can't afford something like this, or at least it's not beneficial to play something like this over something that gets you toward your Silex or toward your influence thresholds. But I think those other decks do need a little help right now, I think.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point you make, where the decks that it's good in and helps and potentially even enable certain decks to thrive better are the decks that we'd want to help, right? We don't really need Kira to have, more power on top of its power, like compared to other, two faction decks, right? Where it's like maybe, a deck that wants to be playing a weird 3-faction thing or whatever, that's not as strict about always needing Justice Influence every turn, is a deck we care about helping right now. So I like that aspect of it.
Yeah. Okay, those are all the cards in Unleashed. We got through it, and it only took 2.5 hours?
2.5 hours.
Yeah. And no one's going to have to edit this, because I'm just going to do a straight rip of it, the audio. So thanks, everyone, for listening. Oh, I guess we should do one thing before wrapping up, and that is making our bold predictions. Since this is live, it's going to take a little while for us to come up with them, unless you know immediately off the top of your head what you think are the best cards. But let's take a second in order to think of 3 cards from the set that we think are going to have the biggest impacts. Okay, just 3.
Okay, let me think for a second.
Yeah.
My number 1. I already spoiled that, but...
Yeah, I only know 1 so far, but I do know 1.
I know 2 of mine.
Oh my gosh, I feel so far behind.
I can cheat, but I'm not going to. My cheaty thing that I was going to do is let me see if I can find it. I was going to say Nesting Avasaur is my cheat card.
Yeah, that reduces the cost of a card by 2.
Yup. Oh, okay, never mind. I know my 3rd. Okay.
Oh man, I'm so far behind. We really need some music to go along for this as I try to figure out what. Thank you, Stormblessed. Oh my god. Okay, that I do have to say that's pretty good incentive to figure out what it is.
It definitely was.
That's so obnoxious.
I will say that was in part the goal.
Okay, I've got 3. I don't know if this is a very robust pick, but I'm just gonna go with 3 so that we can end it.
Okay, so we go with number 3 pick?
Yeah, so Stormblessed, what's your number 3?
I'm going with Display of Survival, the Primal Display. I think that card looks very good and has a lot of flexibility. It's it's not going to ever be like a game break. It actually could be. So maybe it just is a game breaking card. Card looks very good.
Okay, for number 3, I'm going to go with Nico Urban Hunter, which is the 2-cost shadow card that says Frenzy, draw from your void with +1 attack. I think this is going to make people really sad because of auto tread. All right, what's your number 2?
I was thinking of picking. So for number 2, I could have picked any Unleashed combo, but I'm gonna pick Soulfire as my Unleashed combo of choice. But other Unleashed combos also exist, but I'm gonna pick Soulfire.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying to play Soulfire myself. For number 2, I'm gonna pick Gift of the Auric Bank, which is the Minotaur relic, because I think this is going to be a big deal in Expedition. I think that it's pretty hard to deal with. It's going to put a lot of stats on the board, and it's going to fit in a lot of decks. Well, or it's going to fit in the Minotaur decks, which is going to be one of the big decks. Let's just say that.
And then my number 1 is Felon Adept, provided that there's not a degenerate combo that somehow pushes out of the format. Again, I think that card is so looking powerful. Even blocks Nico the first time.
All right, for my number 1, I'm glad that all of ours are different. For my number 1, I'm going to put Display of Survival, which is the Primal.
That was when I said Display of Survival.
Oh, for some reason I thought I heard you say Justice, and I was like, interesting pick.
No.
Justice one's okay, but I don't think it. Oh, okay, shucks. Well, no. Display of Survival is my number 1. If I have to pivot off of that, I don't know.
You don't have to pivot off it. We can agree that Displaced Rival is nuts.
Oh, no,
it is nuts.
If I'm going to pivot off of it, I'm going to say Give Chase is the best one, because I'm crafting premiums. In fact, if you're watching the YouTube video, you can see me press the create button right now. And I'm actually only making one because it's going to be a market card for my 8 merchant deck. Yeah, all right. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of FECast. Stormblessed, thank you for spending the last 2.5 hours with me talking over every single card in the set. We will see you next time. Maybe cue outro music. See you in the friend zone. This is normally where I'd put my spiel about the Friends of Eternal, but if you enjoyed this broadcast, be sure to sub to Friends of Eternal on wherever you get your podcasts and join the Friends of Eternal Discord. Admittedly, it's not nearly as active as it used to be, but we still have a good amount of fun there. Thanks for listening. Until next time, we will see you in the friend zone.